He found her bleeding in the rain, and the men hunting her were already at his door. Ryan Carter had one rule after his wife walked out: never let anyone in again. Not for his sake, for his 4-year-old daughter's. But on a cold October night, he found a girl collapsed outside his building, soaking wet, clutching a bruised wrist and a secret that could get them all killed. He should have called someone. He should have kept walking. Instead, he carried her upstairs and signed his name on a war he never asked to fight.
Nếu bạn muốn biết chuyện gì xảy ra tiếp theo, hãy nhận like và bình luận tên thành phố bạn đang xem để tôi biết câu chuyện của mình đã đi xa đến đâu. Bây giờ, chúng ta bắt đầu.
The rain had been falling for 3 days straight when Ryan Carter dragged himself up the last flight of stairs to apartment 4B, and he could already hear Mia crying through the door.
It wasn't a loud cry. Mia never cried loud. At 4 years old, she already understood in the way damaged children sometimes do. That noise made tired adults angry, and tired adults were the only kind she'd ever really known. So her cries came out small and muffled, the way a kitten sounds when it's been shut in a closet for too long. And that tiny sound did something to Ryan's chest that 10 hours of hauling drywall never could. He fumbled his keys, dropped them, swore under his breath.
"Mrs. Delaney?" he called through the door. "It's me. Sorry I'm late. Traffic on the bridge was—" The door swung open before he finished. Mrs. Delaney stood there with her arms crossed over her pink housecoat, her mouth set in the thin, disappointed line Ryan had learned to dread. Behind her, Mia was sitting on the living room rug with her stuffed rabbit pressed to her face. And the moment she saw her father, she made a noise Ryan would hear in his head for the rest of the week.
Daddy.
Just that. One word. But it cracked in the middle, the way a piece of dry wood cracks when you step on it wrong. "Hey, baby?" Ryan dropped to one knee, ignoring the way his back screamed at him, ignoring Mrs. Delaney, ignoring everything. Mia half ran, half stumbled into him and buried her face against his neck. She smelled like crayons and apple juice and the cheap baby shampoo he bought in bulk at the dollar store. "Hey, hey, hey, hey! I'm here, shh! I'm here now."
You're an hour and a half late, Ryan.
I know, Mrs. Delaney, I'm sorry. The foreman kept us because some idiot dropped a pallet off the... I have a husband who's been sitting in that kitchen since 7 o'clock waiting for his dinner. I told you 9. It's 10:30. I'll pay you extra.
You always say that. Her voice wasn't cruel. It was worse than cruel. It was tired. And I know you mean it, honey. I do. But I'm not running a drop-off center. I'm 71 years old.
Ryan nodded against the top of Mia's head. He didn't trust himself to speak yet. He stood up slowly, Mia clinging to his jacket like a monkey, and reached into his back pocket for his wallet. He counted out 4 20s. It was supposed to be 3. The 4th one was supposed to pay for Mia's preschool registration on Monday. He handed it over anyway. "Thank you," he said. "For everything. Really. I don't know what we'd do without you." Mrs. Delaney took the money. She looked at it for a second, and Ryan watched her face do the thing older women's faces sometimes do when they're about to say something kind and then decide not to. She just tucked the bills into her housecoat pocket and sighed. "There's mac and cheese in the blue Tupperware. She only ate half. She keeps asking for you at bedtime, Ryan, and I'm not her daddy. I can't be her daddy. You understand?" "I understand." "Get some sleep. You look like a corpse." She shut her door softly behind her. The latch clicked. And then it was just Ryan and Mia standing in the yellow fluorescent hallway of a building that smelled like old carpet and somebody else's cooking. And Ryan could feel his daughter's heartbeat against his collarbone, fast and rabbit quick. "Let's go inside, Bug. Don't go away again." "I'm not going anywhere tonight, promise." "Pinky promise?" He held up his pinky. She hooked hers around his. It was a ritual they'd invented when she was 2.5, right after Sarah left, and they'd been performing it almost every single night since. Ryan sometimes wondered, in the dark hours after Mia fell asleep, how many pinky promises a person was allowed to make before the universe started taking them seriously. Inside, the apartment was small and clean and cold, because Ryan had finally given in and turned the heat down to 60 at night to save on the gas bill. He microwaved the mac and cheese. He sat Mia on the counter because the kitchen table was still covered in the bills he hadn't opened yet, and he fed her 3 bites before she fell asleep with cheese on her chin and her fist wrapped around a piece of his t-shirt. He carried her to bed. He pulled the covers up. He stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching her breathe. 32 years old. 2 lifetimes already, he sometimes thought. The one before Mia and the one after. The first one had been noisy and stupid and full of things he regretted. The second one was quiet and narrow, and he wouldn't have traded it for anything on earth. Love, though. Love was a different matter. Love was what got you here in the first place. Love was Sarah, at 24, telling him she couldn't do this. She wasn't built for this. She needed to find herself, and leaving Mia in a car seat on the kitchen floor with a note taped to the diaper bag. Love was a loan shark. Love was a trapdoor. Love, Ryan had decided a long time ago, was something other people were welcome to. He poured himself a glass of tap water. He sat at the kitchen table. He opened the first envelope. Final notice. He opened the second. Past due. He opened the third and didn't even read it. He just laid his forehead down on the cool formica and closed his eyes. That was when he heard the sound from outside. It wasn't much at first. A thud, maybe. The kind of soft, wet thud you hear when a garbage bag slides off a pile. Ryan might have ignored it entirely, except that a second later there was a second sound, and this one was unmistakably human. A small, broken gasp. The sort of sound a person makes when they're trying to be quiet and failing. He lifted his head. His apartment building sat on the corner of Dellwood and 32nd, a 6-story walk-up in a neighborhood that had been on the edge of gentrification for 10 years without ever quite tipping over. The alley ran along the east side. His kitchen window looked directly down into it. On most nights, the only thing Ryan saw out that window was the dumpster and the feral orange cat the super had named Mr. Business. Tonight, in the yellow pool of the sodium vapor light, there was a woman lying face down on the wet pavement. "Oh no," Ryan said out loud. "No, no, no. Not tonight. Not my problem." The woman didn't move. Ryan stood up, sat back down, stood up again. She still didn't move. He thought very clearly and very specifically of every single reason he had to close the blinds and go to bed. Mia upstairs, asleep. Rent due Friday. His boss already threatening to cut his hours if he showed up late one more time. The last time he'd tried to help a stranger, a guy having a seizure on the 14 bus 3 years ago, he'd ended up spending 6 hours at the hospital answering questions from a cop who clearly suspected he'd caused it. He'd missed a whole shift. It had cost him $200 he didn't have. Don't get involved, he told himself. That's the rule. That's always the rule. Then the woman in the alley tried to push herself up, failed, and collapsed again. And Ryan Carter was out his apartment door before his brain had even finished arguing with itself. She was younger than he'd thought. That was the first thing he registered, kneeling beside her on the filthy pavement with rain running down the back of his neck. Early 20s, maybe. Long dark hair plastered across her face in wet ropes. She was wearing what had probably, 12 hours earlier, been a very expensive camel-colored coat. It was ruined now. One sleeve was torn at the shoulder seam. There was mud on her knees and something darker on her right cuff that Ryan didn't want to identify. Hey, miss, can you hear me?" Her eyes were open, barely. She looked at him and her mouth moved, but no sound came out. "I'm going to call an ambulance, okay? Just hold on." "No." The word came out of her in a hoarse whisper. Her hand shot up and caught his wrist with surprising strength. "No. No ambulance. No hospital. Please. Lady, please." He looked at her, really looked, and what he saw on her face in that second wasn't pain, though she was clearly in pain. It wasn't confusion, though he could smell rain and something like metal on her. What he saw was fear. The specific hunted kind of fear he'd seen exactly twice before in his life. Once on his mother's face the night she'd finally packed a bag and left his father, and once on the face of a kid in a holding cell the summer Ryan had spent 3 nights in county lockup after a bar fight when he was 20. It was the fear of someone who believed, down to the marrow, that the thing chasing them was worse than dying. "Okay," he heard himself say. "Okay. No ambulance." He slid one arm under her shoulders and one under her knees and lifted. She weighed almost nothing. She smelled like rain and expensive perfume, and underneath that, like sweat and fear. Her head lolled against his chest. "What's your name?" he asked her, carrying her toward the back door of the building. She didn't answer. He thought she'd passed out again. But then, As he got her up the first flight of stairs, she whispered something against his shirt. Elena. Elena, what? Silence. Elena, can you tell me who did this to you? More silence. And then, so quiet he almost missed it. Don't call the police, please. If you call anyone, they'll know where I am. Please. Ryan stopped on the second-floor landing, breathing hard. The girl called Elena cradled against him like laundry.
Jesus Christ, he said to nobody. Jesus Christ, Ryan, what are you doing? But he kept climbing.
He laid her on the couch. He got towels. He got the first aid kit from under the bathroom sink, the cheap plastic one with the cracked handle that he'd bought after Mia had learned to walk and immediately started falling off things. He peeled Elena out of the ruined coat as gently as he could and found, underneath it, a thin silk blouse that had once been cream-colored and was now gray with rain. Her wrist, the left one, was swollen to nearly twice its normal size, and the skin around it was purple in a way that made Ryan's stomach turn. Not broken, he muttered, probing gently. He'd broken his own wrist at 19, falling off a ladder on his first real job. He remembered the feel of it. Bad sprain maybe a hairline, I can't tell. She winced but didn't make a sound. He got her into one of his old flannel shirts. The sleeves came down past her fingertips. And a pair of Mia's grandma's sweatpants that Mrs. Delaney had left behind after a babysitting night. He rolled the cuffs up 3 times. He wrapped her wrist in an ace bandage that he found in a drawer that, technically, he shouldn't have kept. She was shivering hard. He turned the heat up. He pulled the blanket off his own bed and tucked it around her. You want water? She nodded. He brought her a glass. She drank half of it and set it on the floor with her good hand and closed her eyes. I'm not a good person, she said, almost to herself. Her voice was a little steadier now. It had the faint round shape of money in it, the shape of vowels that had gone to the right schools. You shouldn't have brought me inside. Probably not, Ryan agreed. She opened her eyes and looked at him. They were a strange color, her eyes. Green, but not the green you'd brag about. The green of a pond in late autumn, tired green. I can pay you, she said. For the night. For this. I have... She started to reach for a pocket that wasn't there. Her good hand fumbled against the flannel shirt. I had a bag. A purse. I don't know where. Stop. Please, Stop. I don't want your money. Ryan sat down on the coffee table across from her, forearms on his knees, and he tried to keep his voice even. Look, I have a kid. She's 4. She's asleep in the next room, and she's the only thing on this planet I care about. You understand what I'm telling you? Elena nodded slowly. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sleep on that couch tonight. In the morning, when it's light, we're going to figure out where you go next. Family, a friend, a shelter. I don't care which one, but you can't be here when my daughter wakes up and starts asking questions I don't have answers for. Okay? Okay? Good. He stood up. He was exhausted. His back was killing him. It was past 11. There's a bucket by the couch in case you get sick. Bathroom's down the hall on the left. Don't open the door to anyone. Don't answer the phone. If you hear my daughter get up, just stay quiet. I'll handle it. I won't make trouble. Trouble's already here, lady. You just brought it inside. He turned to go. He was halfway to the hallway when her voice stopped him. Thank you. He didn't turn around. He couldn't, for some reason. He just stood there with his hand on the doorframe. You shouldn't thank me yet, he said. I haven't done anything for you that won't turn out to be a mistake. And he went to bed. He didn't sleep. He lay on his back in the dark with his hands folded on his stomach, and he counted the cracks in the ceiling that he couldn't see. He thought about the girl on his couch. He thought about her wrist, and the mud on her knees, and the way she'd flinched when he closed the kitchen drawer too hard. He thought about the word she'd used. They. They'll know where I am. Not he. Not my ex. They. He thought about Mia. Around 3 in the morning, he gave up and went to the living room. Elena was asleep. The rise and fall of her chest under the blanket was steady now. Some of the color had come back into her face. In the blue light from the street lamp, she looked younger than she had in the alley. Barely an adult, really, the kind of young that is only young when it's asleep. On the coffee table, next to the empty water glass, a small object caught the light. Ryan picked it up. It was a ring, a simple platinum band, heavy for its size, with an inscription on the inside that he had to tilt toward the window to read. To my daughter, on the day she belongs to a better name. A VC. Ryan stared at it for a long time. He put it back on the table exactly where he had found it. He went to the kitchen and he poured himself a finger of the whiskey he kept on top of the fridge for the nights when sleep wouldn't come, and he drank it standing up at the sink, looking out at the alley where Mr. Business was prowling along the edge of the dumpster, and he thought, "You stupid son of a bitch. You have no idea what you just carried up those stairs." In the morning, Mia woke at 6:47 a.m., as she always did, and padded out to the living room in her dinosaur pajamas, trailing her stuffed rabbit, and found a strange woman asleep on the couch. Ryan, pouring coffee in the kitchen, heard his daughter's footsteps stop. He closed his eyes. Here it comes, he thought. But Mia didn't scream. She didn't run back to him. She didn't even ask who the woman was. Ryan came around the corner to find his 4-year-old daughter standing 2 feet from the couch, head tilted to one side, studying Elena's sleeping face with an expression of enormous, solemn interest. Elena's eyes opened. She didn't move. She just looked at Mia, and Mia looked at her. "Hi," Mia said, finally. "Hi," Elena said. "Your hair is wet." "It was raining." "You're in Daddy's shirt." "Your daddy gave it to me. I got too cold." Mia considered this for a moment. Then she held up her stuffed rabbit, which was gray and one-eared and had been through the washing machine more times than Ryan could count. "This is Mr. Buns," she said. "He can sit with you if you're still cold." Ryan watched from the doorway as his daughter, his cautious, wary 4-year-old daughter, who was afraid of the mailman and the vacuum cleaner and any dog bigger than a loaf of bread, walked over and placed her stuffed rabbit very carefully on Elena's chest. Elena's good hand closed around the rabbit's belly, and Ryan saw, from across the room, a single tear slide out of the corner of her eye and disappear into her hair. "Thank you," Elena whispered to Mia. "That's very kind of you." "You're welcome." Mia turned around and walked back toward the kitchen, toward Ryan, with the air of a small diplomat who had successfully concluded a treaty. She reached up to take his hand. Her palm was warm. "Daddy?" she said. "Yeah, Bug." "Why is there a lady?" Ryan looked at the woman on his couch, cradling his daughter's rabbit like it was made of glass. "I don't know yet, baby," he said. "I really don't know yet." He called in sick to work. The foreman swore at him for a full minute before hanging up. Ryan figured he'd lost the job, or close to it, and he was surprised by how little he felt about that. He'd worry about it later. There was a girl on his couch with a sprained wrist and a platinum ring and a fear in her eyes he couldn't unsee, and a daughter at his hip who, for the first time he could remember, seemed to have decided that a stranger was not a thing to be afraid of. He made pancakes. He burned the first one, as he always did. Mia called it the sacrifice pancake, and had, for reasons Ryan had never asked about, developed the ritual of giving it to the birds on the fire escape. He made Elena eat. She protested weakly, but she ate. 2 pancakes, some bacon, half a cup of coffee with too much sugar in it. Color came back into her face. Mia sat on the floor at Elena's feet with a coloring book. Every 3 or 4 minutes, she would hold up a page, a half-colored dinosaur, a mermaid with purple hair, and Elena would study it with the seriousness of an art dealer at auction and say, "That is a very good one. I like the colors." It did something to Ryan, watching this. He didn't have a word for what it did to him. He kept his eyes on his coffee, and he tried not to notice. Around 10, he sat down across from Elena at the kitchen table while Mia was distracted by the TV. "Okay," he said quietly. "Now, you and me, talk." She looked at her coffee cup. "Start with this." He slid the platinum ring across the table toward her. "It was on my coffee table this morning. It wasn't there when I went to bed." Her breath caught. She picked up the ring in her good hand and closed her fist around it. "I thought I'd lost it." "Who's a VC?" "My father." "And what's the better name he put in that ring, Elena?" She didn't answer for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was so low he had to lean forward to hear it. "The name of the man I was supposed to marry last Friday." Ryan sat back slowly in his chair. "Supposed to," he repeated.
I didn't. I can see that. I ran. She set the ring on the table and looked at it as if it were a dead insect. The rehearsal dinner was Thursday night. The family had rented out this whole restaurant on the 40th floor of a building downtown, the one with the glass elevators. There were, I don't know, 150 people there. My father made a speech. He used the word merger 4 times. I counted. Merger. That's what it was. That's what it was always going to be. His company and theirs. My father needed something from them. I was the something. She gave a small, crooked smile that didn't reach her pond green eyes. It sounds very old-fashioned when I say it out loud, doesn't it? In this country, in this century. But money has its own century, mister. Ryan, money has its own century, and in that century, daughters are still currency. How'd you get out? The ladies' room. There was a service elevator. I knew one of the waiters. He used to work at a restaurant near where I went to school, and he remembered me, and She stopped, swallowed. He put me in a cab. He gave me $60. He told me not to tell anyone he helped me. I'm hoping they haven't found out who he was. And then what? The cab, then a bus, then another bus, then I walked. I had my phone for about 4 hours before I realized they could track it, so I dropped it in a storm drain on 3rd Avenue. I had a bag with some clothes, some cash, but Last night someone grabbed me outside the bus station. Her good hand drifted without her seeming to notice to her swollen wrist. I don't know if they were his men or just a man. I ran for blocks. I fell. I got up. I kept running until I couldn't anymore. And I was at the mouth of your alley, and my legs stopped working, and I thought this is where I die then. This is the last thing I see. A dumpster and a cat. Mr. Business? What? Nothing. The cat. Never mind. She looked at him. For the first time since he'd pulled her out of the alley, something in her face was not fear. You're not what I expected, she said. What'd you expect? I don't know. I think I expected someone who would have already called someone, or already looked up how much I might be worth. Ryan snorted. He picked up his coffee cup, which was empty, and set it back down again. Lady, I looked up what my electric bill is worth at 7 this morning. I didn't have energy left to look up anything else. She laughed. It was a small sound, and a surprised one, like a laugh that had been sitting in her chest for a long time waiting to come out. Her hand went to her mouth afterwards, as if the laugh had been an accident. In the other room, Mia laughed at something on the TV, and the 2 laughs, his daughter's and this stranger's, overlapped for just a second in the small apartment, and Ryan felt something in his chest he had not felt in 4 years, and it terrified him. Listen to me, Elena. I'm listening. You can stay here today 1 more night, maybe, while you figure out where you're going. He held up a finger. But tomorrow morning, we figure out a plan. A real one, a shelter, a lawyer, a cop you can trust. I don't know what, but something. Because I have 1 kid in this world, and I'm not equipped to keep a grown woman hidden from people who rent out the 40th floor buildings. You understand me? I understand. And while you're here, you don't touch the phone. You don't go to the window. You don't open the door. If someone knocks, you go in my bedroom and you close the closet door behind you and you don't breathe, okay? 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 He stood up. He went to the coffee table in the living room. He picked up the ring, which she had left behind, and held it out to her. And this, he said, goes back in a pocket somewhere. Or in the trash, whichever. Not on my coffee table. I don't want to look at it. She took it. Her fingers, when they brushed his, were warmer than they had been the night before. Ryan, she said. Yeah. If it matters at all. Thank you. I know you didn't want to help me. I know I'm the worst kind of trouble, but thank you. He didn't know what to say to that. So he said the only thing he could think of, which was true, and which he would remember saying later, when everything he was about to build began to come apart. Don't thank me yet, but the day passed strangely and peacefully. It was a Saturday. Ryan made more coffee than he usually did. Elena slept on the couch for most of the morning, then woke and ate a sandwich, then slept again.
Mia read her books out loud to the sleeping woman very quietly in her careful 4-year-old pronunciation. Once, Ryan walked in and found his daughter patting Elena's hand very gently, the way a nurse might pat the hand of a very old patient. He didn't say anything. Around 2, Elena woke up properly and asked if she could help with anything. Ryan said no. She asked again. Ryan reluctantly let her fold laundry with her one good hand. She did it badly. She had clearly never folded a fitted sheet in her life. Mia, an expert at 4, demonstrated. Elena laughed. It was a sound Ryan hadn't heard in his apartment for a very long time. Not Elena's laugh specifically, but any woman's laugh that wasn't coming out of the television. He noticed it, and then he worked very hard not to notice that he had noticed it. Around 5, the doorbell rang. Elena froze. Mia looked up from her coloring. Ryan held up one finger to Elena. He pointed down the hall, toward his bedroom. She nodded, scooped up the blanket and Mr. Buns, and was gone, silent as a cat, before Ryan had even reached the door. He looked through the peephole. It was Mrs. Delaney, holding a casserole dish. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding and opened the door. "Hi, Mrs. Delaney. I made too much tuna noodle. I brought you half." She pushed the dish into his hands, and then over his shoulder, her eyes went to the living room, to the blanket on the couch, still rumpled where Elena had been lying, and the second coffee cup on the table, and the women's coat that was drying on the radiator. Her eyes came back to Ryan's face. She was 71 years old. She had raised 4 boys. She did not miss things. "Ryan," she said slowly. "Mrs. Delaney. Are you all right, honey?" "I'm fine." "Is someone in there with you and Mia?" Ryan hesitated. He thought about lying. He was a bad liar, always had been, and Mrs. Delaney was the closest thing he had to a mother in this building, and she was not a woman you lied to twice. "Yes," he said finally. A friend. She's having a rough time, just for a day or 2. Mrs. Delaney looked at him for a long moment. She did not smile. "A friend?" "Yes." "From where?" It's a long story." "I'll bet it is." She shifted her weight. She pulled her housecoat tighter around her shoulders. "Ryan Carter," she said, "you listen to me. I have known you for 2.5 years. I know what kind of a man you are. I know you work yourself half to death for that baby in there. I know you haven't had a woman in this apartment since your wife left you holding the bag. I'm not going to ask you questions I don't want the answers to, but I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to hear me." "Okay." "Whoever that woman is in your apartment, whatever story she's telling you, you remember that your daughter doesn't have a backup. She's got you. That's it. That's her whole list. And if you get yourself killed or arrested or stuck in something over your head because some pretty thing showed up on your doorstep crying, she's not. I'm not finished. If any of that happens, it's not going to be her that pays for it. It's going to be the little girl in the dinosaur pajamas who calls me 3 times a week to ask when her daddy is coming home. Are you hearing me?" "I'm hearing you, Mrs. Delaney." "Good." She nodded once, briskly. She turned to go. Then she turned back. "The tuna noodle needs to bake at 350 for 20 minutes. Cover it with foil or the top will burn." "Okay." "And Ryan." "Yes." "I hope she's worth it, whoever she is. For your sake." She walked back to her door. The door closed. Ryan stood in his doorway with the warm casserole dish in his hands, and he stared at Mrs. Delaney's closed door, and then he turned and walked slowly back into his own apartment. Elena was already coming out of the hallway. Her face was pale. She must have heard everything. "She's right," Elena said quietly. "Your neighbor. She's right. I should go. Eat some tuna noodle first." "Ryan, Elena." He set the casserole down on the counter. He rubbed his face. He was so tired. "Sit down. Eat. We'll talk tomorrow. One more night. That was the deal." She sat. They ate. Mia told Elena about her preschool that she hadn't gone to yet. Elena asked what her favorite color was. Mia said purple, then changed her mind and said green, then changed her mind again and said both. After dinner, Ryan did the dishes. Elena stood next to him with a dish towel, drying them one-handed. She did it wrong. He didn't correct her. "Ryan?" "Yeah." "What did your wife do? To you?" He stopped scrubbing the pan. That's a hell of a question. I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. She left. He went back to scrubbing. She decided she didn't want to be a mother, which, look, is a thing a woman is allowed to decide. People change. I get it. But she didn't leave before Mia. She left after. She left a 2-year-old in a car seat on our kitchen floor and went to go find herself in Colorado. That's what she did to me. Mostly, though, that's what she did to Mia. Do you hear from her? A card, usually, on Mia's birthday. Sometimes. Does Mia remember her? No? He set the pan in the drying rack. And I don't correct her when she forgets. Elena was quiet for a while, drying a plate that was already dry. I'm sorry, she said, for what she did. Not your fault. Still, he looked at her. She was standing very close. The flannel shirt was too big on her. Her hair, dry now, was a color somewhere between brown and red that he hadn't been able to see in the rain. She smelled like his soap. He looked away. He went back to the sink. Go to sleep, Elena. Okay. We figure out tomorrow. Okay. She went to the couch. He heard her settle. He finished the dishes. He turned out the lights. He went and lay down in bed with his clothes on because he didn't trust himself to undress. And he stared at the ceiling he couldn't see. And somewhere around 3 in the morning, he finally slept. At 4:17 a.m., his phone vibrated on the nightstand. Unknown number, just a text message. We know she's there. Open the door in 10 minutes or we open it for you. Don't wake the child. Ryan sat up in bed. His heart was a fist in his chest. He got out of bed very, very quietly. He walked down the hall. Elena was asleep on the couch, her good hand tucked under her cheek, Mr. Buns held tight against her ribs. Ryan stood over her for maybe 3 seconds, then he shook her shoulder. Elena, he whispered. Elena, get up. Get up right now. We have to move. Her eyes opened, and outside, down on the street, Ryan heard a car door close. And then another. And then another. She was on her feet before he'd finished saying it, the blanket sliding off her shoulders and hitting the floor in a soft puddle. Mr. Buns dropped from her hand and rolled under the coffee table. Her eyes, those pond green, tired eyes, were suddenly not tired at all. How many? She whispered. I don't know. 3 cars, maybe. I heard doors. Okay. She pressed her good hand flat against her chest, the way people do when they're trying to slow their own heartbeat by force of will. Okay, I knew this. I knew they'd come. I thought I had more time. Elena, listen to me. Ryan grabbed her shoulders. She was shaking, not the kind of shaking that comes from cold, the other kind, the kind that starts somewhere deeper than skin. I need you to think, right now, not in a minute. Is there anyone on this planet, anyone we can call? A cop you trust, a lawyer, a friend with a house, a journalist, anything. She stopped. Started again. There's a woman. She used to work for my father. She got fired 2 years ago. She knows things. But I don't have her number. I don't have any numbers, Ryan. I dropped my phone. Okay, later. Right now we move. Down on the street, another car door. Closer this time. Then a voice, low, professional, giving instructions to somebody else. Ryan couldn't make out the words. He didn't need to. He thought, with a clarity that surprised him, these are not angry men. These are working men. That's worse. Mia, he said out loud to himself, to no one. Mia. He left Elena standing in the living room and moved down the hallway. His daughter was asleep on her side with her fist pressed up under her chin, the way she always slept, and he scooped her out of the bed in one motion, blanket and all, and she barely stirred. Daddy? Shh, bug, shh. We're going on an adventure. Eyes closed. I got you. Is it morning? Not yet. Close your eyes. She burrowed her face into his neck. She trusted him. She trusted him absolutely, without conditions, without the smallest flicker of doubt, and Ryan felt that trust land in the center of his chest like a boot. He came back down the hall with Mia on his hip. Elena was at the window, peering through the edge of the curtain. 4 men, she said quietly. 2 at the front of the building, 1 on the stairs to the lobby. 1, I can't see the 4th. He's probably coming around the back. The alley. Yes. How do you know this? How do you know what they do?
Because my father has had men like this on payroll since I was 12. Her voice was flat. I watched them take a reporter out of our driveway once. When I was 15. I've seen this before. Ryan stared at her for a half second.
Jesus Christ, he said. Yes. He thought, fast. His apartment was on the 4th floor. The front door of the building opened into a narrow lobby with a buzzer panel. The back door opened onto the alley where he'd found Elena. Between them, a single stairwell ran the height of the building, and a service elevator that, to Ryan's knowledge, had been broken since the Obama administration. There was one other way out. The roof. The building across the alley, a 3-story brick thing that had been a laundromat and was now a warehouse for a company that Ryan thought vaguely sold restaurant supplies, had a flat roof with a fire escape running down its far side. The two buildings were maybe 7 feet apart. Ryan had never jumped it, but he'd looked at it, idly, the way a man looks at things when he's exhausted on his own fire escape having a cigarette he's promised his daughter he'd quit. 7 feet, give or take, with a 4-year-old in his arms.
Elena, he kept his voice low. Your wrist. Can you climb? Yes. Are you sure? I am sure. Go to the bedroom, the closet. On the top shelf there's a duffel bag, olive green. Inside it there's about $600 in cash and my daughter's birth certificate. Bring it. Go now. She went. Ryan set Mia down on the couch, gently, as if she were something that might shatter. He pulled on his boots. He shoved his keys and his wallet into his jacket pocket. On the kitchen counter there was a steak knife, the good one, the one he'd bought himself as a Christmas present 2 years ago. He picked it up. He looked at it. He put it back down. He wasn't a man who used knives and pretending to be one would only get him and his daughter killed. Instead, he grabbed the thing he'd actually use, a small red aerosol can of wasp killer from under the sink, the one with the 20-foot spray radius. It wasn't much. It was something. Elena came back with the duffel bag. She also had, tucked under her good arm, his daughter's stuffed rabbit, which she must have fished out from under the coffee table without him seeing. That small kindness did something to Ryan's chest that he didn't have time for. Here. She handed him the bag. I grabbed Mia's little pink jacket from the hook. Good. Good. Okay. Listen to me. We are going to the roof. The roof. And then we're jumping to the warehouse next door. It's 7 feet. Maybe 8. I can make it with Mia. You can make it alone. There's a fire escape down the far side of that building that lets out on 31st. From there we walk. We don't run. Running gets us seen. We walk like we live here. We go to the bus station on 29th. There's a bus at 5:12 to, I don't know, somewhere, anywhere. We pick a destination when we see the board. She stared at him. You've thought about this before, she said slowly. I've lived in this building 3 years. I think about the way out of it every single day. That's just how I'm built. There was something in her face for a half second that he didn't understand. Then it was gone. Okay, she said. Okay, Ryan, the roof. He scooped Mia up again. She didn't open her eyes. She made a small, sleepy, complaining sound and wrapped her arms around his neck. And then she was quiet. From the hallway outside the apartment door came the soft, unmistakable sound of a man's footstep on the 4th floor landing. They didn't have 10 minutes. They had about 90 seconds. Ryan killed the lights. There was a service door at the end of the 4th floor hallway that Ryan had always assumed was locked. He'd been wrong, or he'd been right for years and wrong for the last 6 weeks, since the super had replaced the old lock with a cheap push bar to comply with a fire inspection notice that Ryan had seen taped to the mailbox in July. He didn't know which. He didn't care. The bar gave under his shoulder and the door opened onto a narrow concrete stairwell that smelled like rust and old cigarette smoke. And above them, 2 flights up, he could see the outline of the roof hatch against the night sky. Elena pulled the door shut behind them. Quietly. So quietly. Go, Ryan whispered. Up, fast. Don't talk. She went. She moved well for a woman who had collapsed in an alley 36 hours ago. Whatever she'd been raised as, Ryan thought, climbing behind her, she had not been raised soft. Her feet on the concrete steps were almost silent. Mia slept against his shoulder. She weighed 34 pounds.
Ryan had carried her sleeping to bed 1,000 times. He had never before understood that 34 pounds was a number that could kill you if you were trying to move fast up a stairwell you'd never climbed, away from men you had never seen, for reasons you did not fully understand. At the top, the roof hatch was held shut by a simple hook. Elena lifted it. The hatch came up with a small complaining groan, and cold, wet air poured down the stairwell into Ryan's face. And for a second he thought the rain had stopped, and then he was on the roof, and Elena was beside him, and the door was closed. The roof was flat and pebbled and surprisingly large. In the middle of it sat the HVAC unit, humming. At the far edge, a knee-high parapet marked the drop into the alley. Beyond the parapet, across 7 feet of open air, sat the flat tar and gravel roof of the warehouse, maybe 3 feet lower than where they stood. 3 feet lower. That helped. "Okay," Ryan said. "Okay. Go to the edge. Don't stand up straight. Crouch. They can see us from the street if they look up." They went. Elena got there first and went to her belly without being told. Ryan dropped to one knee. He set Mia down very gently on the gravel, and she whimpered, "Daddy? Bug, baby, listen to me. Listen. I need you to be the biggest brave girl you have ever been in your life, okay? For like 10 seconds. It's cold. I know, Bug. Here." He pulled the little pink jacket out from where Elena had tucked it into the duffel, and he zipped Mia into it. She was awake now. She looked around at the roof, and her eyes got very big. "Why are we up high?" "Because we're going to jump. Across." "No." "Yes, Bug." "No." "Mia, listen to me. No, no, no." He had about 4 seconds, he thought, before she started to scream. Maybe 3. And a screaming 4-year-old on a rooftop was the end of everything. Elena slid over on her belly and put her good hand on Mia's shoulder. "Mia," she whispered. "Mia, look at me. Look at me, sweetheart." Mia looked. Her lower lip was trembling. Her eyes were huge. "Do you know that game you play where you're a brave adventurer?" Elena said. "And you have to get across the lava?" "Why? I don't play that game." "Oh, well, I played it when I was little. It's a very good game. The floor is lava, and you have to get from one safe spot to another safe spot without touching the ground. Do you know what you need to play it?" "What?" "A very strong person to carry you, so the lava doesn't touch you. Your daddy is the strongest person I've ever seen, stronger than anyone I know, but he can't do it if you squeeze his neck too tight or if you yell. Can you be quiet for 10 seconds? Quiet like a mouse?" Mia's lip was still trembling, but she nodded, very slightly. "Okay. Good girl, here." Elena reached into the duffel and pulled out Mr. Buns. She handed him to Mia. "Mr. Buns goes first. Mr. Buns is very brave. You have to hold him very tight so he doesn't get scared." Mia took the rabbit. She pressed him against her chest. Ryan looked at Elena. Just for a second. He didn't know what his face was doing. Something, probably. "Go," he whispered to her. "You first." "Ryan, go. If you make it, I know I can." She didn't argue. She backed up a few feet, rose to a crouch, took 2 hard running steps, and threw herself over the gap. She landed on the warehouse roof with a heavy, ugly thud. Not graceful, not the way it looks in a movie. Her good hand took the impact first. She skidded on the gravel. Her bad wrist caught her weight by accident, and he heard the sound she made, a sharp, involuntary bark of pain, bitten off almost before it was out. But she was up. She was standing. She was across. She turned, crouched low, and held out her good arm. "I've got her," she whispered across the gap. "Hand her to me." Ryan shook his head. No, I'm carrying her." "Ryan, your weight plus hers. Look, if you miss, I'm not handing my daughter across a 7-foot gap in the dark." "Then throw her." "What?" "Throw her, to me. I'll catch. It's 4 feet horizontal from the edge. She's light. I can—" "Are you out of your mind? Ryan, those men are in the stairwell right now. I can hear them. Throw her, or we all die on this roof." He stared at her. His heart was hammering. Mia was clinging to his pant leg. He could hear, very faintly, the sound of the service door 2 floors below opening. He picked up his daughter. He held her face against his, and he kissed her forehead, and he said very quietly into her hair, "Bug, I'm going to toss you like we're playing, like the airplane game. Elena is going to catch you. Elena is very good at catching. Mr. Buns has to fly first, remember, then you. Close your eyes. I'm scared, Daddy. I know, Bug. I know. He lifted her. He felt, in that second, the entire weight of his life in his hands. He swung her back once, twice. On the third swing, he threw his daughter over a 7-foot gap in the dark, and Elena caught her, clean, against her chest with her good arm, and went down hard on her knees, absorbing the impact. And Mia made one small sound and then buried her face in Elena's shoulder and didn't make another. Ryan didn't wait. He backed up 5 steps, ran, and jumped. He landed badly. His right ankle rolled under him, and he went down onto his hands and knees and slid forward. And for one bright hot second, he thought he'd broken something. But then he was up, and the pain was there, but the leg was holding, and Elena was already half running, half limping across the warehouse roof with Mia in her arms, and he was right behind her. The fire escape on the far side was older than the one on his own building and had maybe 3 working bolts in it, and they half climbed and half slid down it in a way that would, later, leave both of them bruised in places they hadn't known could bruise. At the bottom, they were in a side street, 31st Street, as Ryan had said, with a street light that was flickering and a dumpster, and thank God, not God, thank something, no black cars. Walk, Ryan whispered. Walk. Don't run. Hold her like she's yours. Don't look up at the roof. Elena nodded. They walked. They turned the corner onto 31st. They walked 2 blocks. Ryan's ankle was screaming. His shirt was wet through with rain and sweat, and he could feel a slow thread of blood running down his shin from where the fire escape had opened a cut on his knee. Mia was making small, soft sounds into Elena's hair. Elena was walking the way a person walks when her wrist is broken, and she refuses to admit it. They walked. At the corner of 31st and Parnell, a black SUV turned the corner ahead of them. Slow, crawling, the kind of slow that means looking. Ryan's heart stopped, but Elena, without missing a beat, turned to him and, with her face close to his, started laughing. A big, easy, drunk girl laugh. She wobbled. She put her good hand on his chest. Babe, she said loudly, slurring. Babe, I told you we shouldn't have done the last shot. I told you. Ryan, after a half-second of pure dumb confusion, caught up. He wrapped his arm around her waist. I know, honey. You told me. I know. You never listened to me. I never listened to you. The SUV rolled past. Ryan didn't look at it. His peripheral vision told him its windows were black. He could feel a man's eyes on his back for maybe 2 seconds, and then they were past, and the SUV was turning the next corner, and they were still walking. Around the next block, Elena's performance collapsed. She sagged against him. Her whole weight came onto his side. Ryan, she breathed. Ryan, I don't think I can. You can. 2 more blocks. 2 more blocks to the station. Don't you dare quit on me now, Elena. Not after what you just pulled back there. Mia is okay? Mia is okay. Promise? Promise. She kept walking. The bus station at 29th Street was the ugliest building Ryan had ever loved. It was a squat concrete box with fluorescent lights that buzzed, and a ticket window manned by a man who, at 5:15 in the morning, had clearly achieved a state of consciousness that was neither awake nor asleep, and who did not look up from his phone when Ryan slid $300 bills across the counter. 3 tickets, Ryan said, wherever the next bus goes. Next bus is Harriston, 5:22. You got 6 minutes. 3 tickets. It's $64 each. Keep the change. The man looked up, finally. He looked at Ryan. He looked at Elena, who was holding Mia and standing 2 feet behind Ryan with her face turned away from the security camera over the ticket window. He looked at Mia, who was asleep again, her mouth open against Elena's shoulder. The man was maybe 60. He had the kind of face that had seen a lot of versions of this particular scene at a lot of different hours. He slid the bills back across the counter. He kept one. He slid the other 2 back to Ryan. 64, he said. 1 ticket, adults. The kids free up to 5. You ride together, you pay for 1. Ain't a hotel. Ryan stared at him. Bus is at platform 2, the man said. Tell the driver you lost your receipt. 6 minutes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Ain't my business what you're running from. Ain't any of ours down here. He went back to his phone. Go on. You got 4 minutes now. They made the bus with 90 seconds to spare. The driver, bored, stamped their ticket without looking at it. The bus was nearly empty. 4 or 5 other passengers, all of them asleep or pretending to be. Ryan slid into the seats at the very back, the ones over the wheel well, and Elena put Mia on the seat between them and tucked the little pink jacket around her. Mr. Buns, somehow, was still in Mia's fist. The bus pulled out of the station at 5:22 exactly. Ryan watched the city roll past the rain-streaked window. He watched the bus station shrink and disappear. He watched the on-ramp to the interstate rise up to meet them. And then they were on it, and the city was behind them, and they were moving at 65 miles an hour through a dark landscape he couldn't see. Elena was pressed against the window, her eyes closed, her bad wrist cradled in her lap. Her face, in the dim overhead light, was the color of wet paper. Elena. Your wrist. It's fine. It's not fine. It is not fine, she agreed without opening her eyes, but it is not a problem I can solve on a bus. He studied her for a second. Elena, where's Hairston? I have no idea. Me neither. A small laugh escaped her. Then, to his surprise, a small sob after it. She pressed the back of her good hand against her mouth. Ryan, don't. I have to. Don't. Not right now. Not here. We made it out. That's what we did. That's all we did. We breathe for an hour. We figure out the rest when the sun comes up. She nodded, eyes closed. A tear slid down her cheek. Ryan sat back in his seat. His ankle was throbbing. The cut on his knee had bled through his jeans. The adrenaline was starting to go. And what was coming in behind it was the shakes. The slow, ugly, post-crisis shakes that he remembered from the construction site the day he'd seen a man fall 2 stories and live. He looked at his daughter, asleep between them, her cheek squashed against the gray vinyl seat, her whole fist around the rabbit's ear. He thought, she trusted me. She trusted me, and I threw her across a roof. He thought, if I had missed... He stopped thinking that. He stopped, deliberately, the way a man stops himself from looking over the edge of a bridge. Instead, he looked at Elena. She had opened her eyes again. She was watching him. In the bad overhead light, her face was tired and bruised, and nothing about her was perfect, and he noticed, with a feeling like swallowing a stone, that he was going to remember this face for a long time. Ryan, she said quietly. Yeah. Why did you come back to the window? What? Last night, when they texted you. You could have walked out of the bedroom and out the front door. You could have told them I was in there and walked away with your daughter. They wouldn't have stopped you. That's how these men work. They want clean. They want the target. They would have let you go. Ryan looked out the window. The interstate was dark. The occasional pair of headlights came past in the opposite lane. He watched one, then another, then another. I don't know, he said, finally. I don't know why. Yes, you do. No, I don't, Elena. I really don't. I thought about it. I'll be honest with you. I stood in that hallway for about 2 seconds, and I thought about opening the front door and taking Mia and walking past those men and saying she's in the living room, help yourself. I thought about it. Why didn't you? Because... He stopped. He tried to find the words. He was not a man who had words usually, and especially not at 5:30 in the morning on a bus going to Hairston. Because my daughter put her rabbit on your chest yesterday morning, Elena. That's not a reason. It's my reason. She was quiet for a long time. You know what my father would do to a man who helped me. Her voice was very small. You know what he's capable of. I'm starting to get a picture. It's worse than the picture. I figured. Ryan, I need you to understand what you just did. I need you to understand what you are now to him. You are a man who has seen his daughter. You are a man who knows his daughter is not who she was supposed to be. You are a witness. Do you understand what that word means to a man like my father? It doesn't mean what it means to other people. It means a problem. I understand. I don't think you do. Elena. He turned to look at her. I understand. I'm not a stupid man. I'm a tired man, okay? And a broke man. but I'm not a stupid one. I understood what I was doing when I came back to that window. I understood what I was doing when I told Mrs. Delaney she's a friend. I understood what I was doing when I threw my own daughter across a roof. I understood all of it. I just did it anyway. Sometimes a man does a thing anyway. That's allowed. Is it? Yes. It's allowed. She looked at him for a long moment. Something was happening in her face that he didn't quite understand. Then she turned to the window, and she leaned her forehead against the cold glass, and she did not speak again for 45 minutes. Hairston turned out to be the kind of town that had been alive in 1962 and had been slowly dying ever since. One main street, 3 traffic lights, a diner, a feed store that was now a vape shop, a motel called the Starlight that was neither light nor starry, but was, Ryan observed, still open at 7:04 in the morning. The bus let them out at a Shell station. The driver, who had not said a word to any of them in 4 hours, pulled the lever to close the door and was gone. Ryan stood on the cracked pavement with Mia in his arms, awake now, bewildered, silent, and Elena beside him, and he tried to think. "We need 3 things," he said, mostly to himself. "A place to sit down, a phone, and ice for your wrist." The diner? The diner. The diner was called Lou's and was exactly the thing you would picture if someone said, "A diner in a small town at 7 a.m." A tired waitress in a red apron poured coffee without being asked and did not look twice at the 3 of them. A dirty man, a girl in a man's flannel shirt with a swollen wrist, a 4-year-old in a pink jacket clutching a stuffed rabbit. Ryan realized somewhere in the middle of his first cup of coffee that a place like this had probably seen much stranger things than them come in off the bus at dawn. Mia ate a pancake. She ate the whole thing. She ate it in small, careful bites without speaking, and when she was done, she looked up at Ryan and said, "Daddy, is the adventure over?" "Almost, Bug." "Was I brave?" "You were the bravest. Can I have another pancake?" "You can have 10 more pancakes." "Just one." "Just one." Elena across the booth pressed the side of her face against her good hand. Her eyes were wet. She was smiling a little. Ryan looked away from her and asked the waitress for a bag of ice. After Mia had eaten her second pancake and gone quiet with the kind of full-belly drowsiness that 4-year-olds cannot fight, Elena reached across the table. She put her good hand very lightly on the back of Ryan's. "There's a phone on the wall by the restroom," she said. "An actual payphone. I haven't seen one in years. You want to make a call?" "I have to." "You said you didn't have numbers." "I don't. But my cousin Daniel has had the same landline at his mother's house in Colorado for 20 years, ever since we were kids. I memorized it when I was 11 because he was the only person in the whole family who was ever kind to me, and I was afraid of forgetting. My father hasn't spoken to that side of the family in almost a decade. He won't think to have them watched." "You're sure?" "I'm not sure of anything, Ryan, but it's a card. It's a card I can play." He pulled his hand out from under hers, gently, and fished the quarters out of his pocket. He had 4. He slid them across the formica. "Go." She went. He watched her walk to the back of the diner, one arm hanging useless at her side, the other holding her elbow like a woman who had been shot and was trying not to say so. She dialed. She waited. She stood for a long time with the receiver pressed to her ear. And then, he could see it, even from across the diner, her whole body sagged, and she put her good hand over her mouth, and she began to cry. He got up. He walked to the back. He stood next to her without touching her. "Danny," she was whispering into the receiver. "Danny, it's Lena." Yes, I know, I'm sorry, I know." A long pause. Ryan heard, faintly, a man's voice on the other end. It was loud. It was not angry. It was the voice of a person who had been waiting for a phone call for a very long time. "No," Elena said. "No, I can't say. Somewhere. I'm somewhere. Danny, listen. Danny, listen to me. I need somewhere to go, just for a little while, until I can figure out. Yes, there are 3 of us. Don't ask. I'll tell you when I get there." More of the man's voice. Elena was nodding into the phone as if he could see her nodding. Yes, okay. Thank you.
Danny? Danny, thank you. Yes, okay. I have to go. I have to go. Someone might be listening to this phone. I don't know. Yes. Okay. I love you too. She hung up. She turned to Ryan. Her face was wet. His mother's house, she said, in a town outside Boulder. He says we can stay for as long as we need. Okay. Ryan. She grabbed his shirt with her good hand like a drowning person grabs a rope. Ryan, you don't have to come. You can take Mia and go home. I know I asked too much already. I know. Elena, I know you have a life. You have a job. I don't have a job, Elena. The foreman fired me yesterday. I just haven't told anybody yet. She stopped. And my apartment, Ryan went on quietly, is currently being turned over by 4 men in suits who think there's a woman sleeping on my couch. I don't think I'll be going back there anytime soon either. Oh. Yeah. Oh. She stared at him. I'm sorry, she said. I know. I'm so sorry. I know, Elena. I know you are. But I need you to hear me say this just once, so we both understand the shape of the thing. He kept his voice very level. I am not going to Colorado because you are sorry. I am not going to Colorado because I'm some kind of good guy. I am going to Colorado because my daughter has already made a friend out of you, and I have watched her make exactly 3 friends in her entire life. And I am not going to be the man who takes her second best friend away from her because he was scared. That's the whole reason. That's it. Don't put anything else on it. She looked down at her feet. Okay, she whispered. Okay. They bought bus tickets to Denver out of a vending machine at the depot. It took most of what was left of the $600. The bus wasn't until 2:15 in the afternoon, so they sat in the diner booth for 5 hours, taking turns dozing, and Mia colored on the paper placemats with crayons the waitress brought her without being asked, and Elena wrote down, on the back of one of the placemats, in clean, neat handwriting that was clearly the handwriting of a woman who had gone to expensive schools, a list of things. Ryan watched her write. When she was done, she slid the placemat across to him. It was a list of names, 5 of them. 2 were names Ryan recognized, a senator and a real estate developer he'd seen on a billboard. 3 were names he didn't recognize at all. What is this, he said. Men who owe my father favors, the ones I'm certain about. There are more. But these 5 will make phone calls for him. If we're going to run, Ryan, we should know who we're running from. All of them. All the faces. You want me to remember these names. I want you to keep that list. Somewhere. Not in your phone. On paper. In case something happens to me and you and Mia have to keep running without me. He looked at the list. Elena, don't argue with me, please. He folded the placemat. He put it in his wallet behind Mia's school registration form he had not, in the end, been able to pay for. Nothing is going to happen to you, Ryan. Nothing is going to happen to you, not while I'm here. That's the new rule. That is a ridiculous rule. It's my rule. I'm allowed one. She looked at him for a long second. There was something in her eyes that he had seen before, twice. Once on his mother's face, the night she left his father, and once on a face he thought he had forgotten, the face of a woman at a hospital the morning Mia was born, who had looked at their daughter for the first time with an expression Ryan had not understood then and understood now, too late. Elena looked away. She picked up her coffee cup in her good hand. Her hand was shaking. Ryan Carter, she said, I don't know what to do with you. Get on the bus to Denver is what you do. That's not what I meant. I know. The bus to Denver boarded at 2:05. It was a long silver thing with a cracked windshield and a driver who chewed toothpicks. Ryan carried Mia on. Elena followed, slower, favoring her wrist. They took 3 seats in the middle this time. Mia had the window. Elena had the aisle. Ryan sat behind them so he could see the length of the bus. He watched every passenger who got on. An old man with a cane, a woman with 2 plastic grocery bags, a kid in a hoodie with earbuds in, a woman in scrubs, clearly off a hospital shift, nobody in a suit, nobody with the kind of shoes Elena had told him to watch for. The bus pulled out of Harriston at 2:17. Ryan leaned his head against the cold glass and watched the town slide past. A vape shop, a post office,
A church with a sign out front advertising bingo. A tractor dealership. A single stoplight. Then fields, then more fields, then the on-ramp. Mia turned around in her seat and looked at him over the headrest. Her eyes were big. Her hair was a mess. Her cheek had a crease in it from sleeping on the vinyl. Daddy. Yeah, Bug. Are we going home? He thought about that question for a long time. He thought about the apartment on Delwood and Mrs. Delaney's casserole dish and the cracked Formica kitchen table with the unpaid bills on it and the couch where he'd found a stranger that had stopped being a stranger somewhere around the second pancake in a diner in a town they had never heard of. We're going somewhere new, Bug. Will there be a bed? Yeah, there'll be a bed. Will Elena be there? He didn't answer for a second. Elena, in the seat in front of him, was very still, and he knew she was listening. Yeah, Bug. Elena will be there. Okay. Mia nodded, satisfied. She turned back around. She pressed her face to the window. She watched the fields go by with the serious, absorbed attention of a 4-year-old who had been told that everything was fine and had, for the moment, decided to believe it. Ryan closed his eyes. Elena's good hand came over the top of her seat slowly and settled on the back of his hand where it rested on his knee. She didn't say anything. He didn't pull away. Outside, the sky was turning the color of wet concrete. The fields went on for a long time. The bus drove west. The bus drove west for 16 hours, and Ryan did not sleep for any of them. He dozed sometimes, the way a man on watch dozes. 1 layer of him under, 3 layers of him up, and listening. Every time the bus slowed for a rest stop, he opened his eyes. Every time a new passenger stepped on board at a depot in a town whose name he didn't catch, he watched the length of the aisle until that person was seated, and then he watched them a little longer. He watched shoes, mostly. Elena had told him, sometime around hour 4, that the men her father sent always had good shoes. Suits could be cheap. Haircuts could be changed. The shoes were how you knew. He did not see a single pair of good shoes. Somewhere in Kansas, the rain stopped. Somewhere in eastern Colorado, the land itself seemed to change. The flat, stubborn fields gave way slowly to a different kind of flatness, browner and drier and wider. And then, far ahead, barely visible through the dirty windshield, the first gray teeth of mountains. Mia slept against Elena's good shoulder for most of the second half of the trip. Elena didn't move. Ryan watched Elena's face in the window reflection. She had her eyes closed, but he knew she wasn't sleeping either, because every few minutes she would shift her wrist very carefully in its makeshift sling, and her mouth would flatten into a hard line and stay there for a while before relaxing again. He thought, watching her, that she had a face that looked almost plain when it was at rest. No expression, no effort, just a face. And then some small thing would happen. Mia's head would slide down her arm, and Elena would tuck it back up with infinite sleepless tenderness. And her face would not be plain at all. Ryan noticed this, and then he looked away from the window, because he was a practical man, and he was trying to remain one. They pulled into the Denver bus station a little after 7 in the morning. Mia woke up confused and hungry and said, the second her eyes opened, "Daddy, I have to pee," with the quiet desperation of a 4-year-old who has been holding it for an unknown amount of time. "Hold on, Bug. 30 seconds. Daddy." 30 seconds, Mia. Elena, awake now, already had the little pink jacket off the seat beside her. She moved with surprising efficiency for a woman running on no sleep and a cracked wrist. Ryan swung the duffel bag over his shoulder, scooped Mia up, and they were off the bus and into the station bathroom inside of 2 minutes. He waited outside the stall. Elena leaned against the tile wall across from him with her eyes closed. "Danny said he'd come," she said quietly. "He's driving in from his mother's place. It'll take him a little over an hour. There's a coffee shop across the street. He said wait there. Order something. Look normal." Look normal. I know how it sounds. We look like refugees, Elena. I know. The coffee shop was one of those nervous, cheerful places that had opened in the last 5 years and was trying hard to be from Portland. Exposed brick, chalkboard menus. A woman behind the counter with a nose ring and an expression that suggested she had recently made a decision about what she deserved and was prepared to defend it. Ryan bought a coffee, a hot chocolate for Mia, and a croissant the 3 of them shared on a leather couch in the back corner. He sat with his back to the wall. He watched the door. Every time the bell chimed, he looked up. The bell chimed a lot. "Tell me about your cousin," he said, after a while. Elena opened her eyes. She was nursing her coffee like it was medicine. Daniel? Danny.
He'll always be Danny to me. He is my father's sister's son. His mother is Rose. She is but the only person in that whole family who ever told my father no, to his face, and meant it. When I was 9, my mother was diagnosed with, well, she got very sick. My father handled it by pretending it wasn't happening. Aunt Rose handled it by moving into our house for 5 months and making me grilled cheese sandwiches and reading to me at night. After my mother died, my father sent Rose away. He didn't want the reminder, I think. He and Rose didn't speak for 12 years. Danny and I wrote letters for a while. Then we stopped. You know how children stop. Yeah.
Danny's 41. He teaches 8th grade history at a public school. He's the kind of man who still writes handwritten thank you notes. I don't know what he's going to look like when I see him. I haven't laid eyes on him since I was 17. And he's going to just take us in. 3 strangers. I'm not a stranger. Elena, you just told me you haven't seen him since you were 17. He picked up the phone, Ryan. I gave him no warning. I gave him no information. I said, Danny, it's Lena. And he said, where are you? I'm coming. You don't understand what that means. In my family, that does not happen. That is not a thing that happens. So yes, he is going to take us in. Ryan drank his coffee. He thought about a man he'd never met who had said, where are you? I'm coming to a voice he hadn't heard in 15 years, and he didn't know what to do with the feeling that gave him. Mia wandered over with her hot chocolate. She had a whipped cream mustache. She climbed up into the seat between them and leaned her whole body against Elena's good side and announced without any preamble, Elena, I lost a tooth yesterday. Did you, baby? Which one?
Mia pointed into her own mouth with a great deal of ceremony. Oh. Elena leaned down and examined the gap with appropriate solemnity.
That's a very good tooth to lose, a premium tooth.
A premium tooth?
The best kind. Is the tooth fairy going to come?
Ryan felt, very suddenly, a kind of pain behind his sternum that had nothing to do with exhaustion. He had not thought about the tooth. The tooth had come out in the apartment 2 nights ago, right before bedtime, and he had promised Mia he'd call the tooth fairy personally, and then all of this had happened, and the tooth was still, presumably, wrapped in a piece of paper towel on the shelf above the sink, in a bathroom Ryan was never going to see again.
The tooth fairy is very sophisticated, Elena said smoothly, without looking at Ryan. Did you know that? She has a whole travel department. She doesn't get upset when a tooth moves. She just finds it. She's probably already updated your file. I have a file? Every child has a file. It's color-coded. What's my color? What do you think it is? Mia considered this, biting her lower lip. Purple, she said finally. Or green. I can't decide. Mine too. Really? Really? Ryan stood up. He walked to the counter. He bought a second croissant he did not want. He stood at the counter, waiting for it, even though it was already in a bag in front of him, because he didn't trust himself to turn around. The bell over the door chimed. He turned. The man who had just walked in was tall and thin and had the posture of a person who had been tall his whole life and had spent most of it apologizing for it. He wore a plaid shirt and a beat-up canvas jacket, and he looked at first glance like every public school teacher Ryan had ever seen in his life. He had Elena's eyes, the same strange pond green set in a different face. His eyes swept the coffee shop. They stopped on the couch in the back. Ryan watched Daniel cross that room the way he had seen a man cross a room exactly once before in his life. At his grandfather's funeral, when his grandmother had come through the double doors of the church, and his grandfather's oldest friend had seen her and gone to her without a word, because some walks across some rooms were, on some days, the only thing that was going to get done. Elena stood up. She lost her balance for a second. Her bad wrist, or the exhaustion, or something deeper than either. And Daniel caught her against his chest, one-armed and clumsy, and Ryan watched his cousin put his hand on the back of her head and hold it there, very gently, the way you'd hold the head of an infant. Elena did not cry. She just stood there against him, and Ryan watched her whole body go soft, and he understood, finally, in a way he had not quite understood before, what she had been carrying for 3 days.
A person's shoulders, he realized, can hold a lot of weight before they let go, and when they let go, they do it all at once. After a long minute, Daniel held her out at arm's length and looked at her. He looked at her face. He looked at her wrist. His jaw worked for a second. "Lena," he said, and his voice was rough. "Lena, look at you. Oh, look at you." "Hi, Danny." "Hi." "I'm sorry." Don't you dare. Don't you ever. Danny? Who hurt your wrist?" It's a sprain. It's not." "Who?" "No one. I fell." "Lena." "I fell, Danny. That part is actually true. I fell in an alley. Ryan found me." Daniel's head turned, and for the first time, Ryan got the full weight of those green eyes, which, on this man, were not tired at all. They were extremely awake. "Ryan." "That's me," Ryan said. Daniel walked over. He stopped about 2 feet away. He didn't offer a hand. Ryan didn't either. They looked at each other for a second that felt longer than it was. "You're the man who helped my cousin." "Yes, sir." "The man with the daughter. That's her on the couch, with your cousin, in the pink jacket." "Yes." Daniel looked at Mia. Mia, sensing that she was being discussed, looked back. She raised a small, sticky hand and waved. Daniel waved back. Then he turned to Ryan, and he did something that surprised Ryan. He put both hands on Ryan's shoulders. Not hard, not threatening. Just a hand on each shoulder, firmly, the way a man makes sure another man is paying attention. "Listen to me, Ryan. I need you to know 2 things. 1, anything you did for my cousin, anything at all, you did for my family, and we are not the kind of family that forgets. You understand me?" "Okay." 2, I've got a car outside. It's a 7-year-old Subaru, and it smells like wet dog, because I have a wet dog. We're going to get in that car, all 4 of us, and we're going to drive up to my mother's place, which is about an hour outside the city. On the way there, I'm going to ask you some questions, and you're going to answer them honestly, because my mother is 76 years old and she has a bad heart, and I need to know exactly what is walking into her living room. Are we clear?" "Clear." "Good." Daniel let go of Ryan's shoulders. He turned back to Elena and to Mia, and his whole face changed. The hardness went out of it and something softer and older came in. And he said, "Hi, sweetheart. My name is Danny. What's your name?" "Mia Rose Carter," said Mia, who had never in her life given her full name to a stranger. "Mia Rose, like my mama. I'm 4. That is the perfect age, I mean it. No other age is as good. I lost a tooth." "I'll bet you did. I'll bet it was a premium one." Mia nodded gravely. Ryan looked at Elena over the tops of their 2 heads, the tall man's and the small girl's already in league against him. And he caught her looking back at him, and for a second the whole coffee shop was quiet, except for the espresso machine and the scratch of some indie singer on the speakers and the small bell that rang whenever the door opened onto the street. She mouthed silently, "It's okay." He nodded, once. It wasn't okay. Not yet. But something had shifted. He could feel it. The trajectory of the fall had changed. Not stopped, just changed. The Subaru did smell like wet dog, and Daniel was right about the 7 years and about the dog, a golden retriever mix named Harold, who was not in the car right now, but whose presence was strongly represented in the upholstery. Ryan sat in the front passenger seat. Elena and Mia took the back. For the first 10 minutes of the drive, Daniel didn't say anything. He just drove and watched the rearview mirror and drove. They took a sequence of surface streets out of the city that did not feel like a route to anywhere. They doubled back twice. Once, Daniel pulled into the parking lot of a shuttered IHOP, turned the engine off, and waited for 7 full minutes, watching the road behind them. No one came. He pulled back out and got on the highway. "You're careful," Ryan said quietly, so Mia wouldn't hear. "My cousin called me at 4:45 in the morning from a payphone," Daniel said, eyes on the rear view. "I've been reading about her father's business for about 15 years now. I like being careful. It feels like a healthy hobby." "Yeah." "So, questions. What's your last name, Ryan?" "Carter." "Where do you live?" "A building on Delwood, about 1,600 miles east of here. I don't live there anymore, I guess." "What do you do?" "I did framing, construction, up until 3 days ago. I'm Between jobs. Who did you tell you were leaving? Nobody. Your daughter's mother? Not in the picture, hasn't been for 3 years. Family? Parents? My mother's in Florida. We talk twice a year. Birthdays, Christmas. That's it. Debts? Some. Warrants? Ryan glanced over. Excuse me? Don't be insulted. I have to ask. No warrants. Ever.
A misdemeanor when I was 21. Disorderly. Spent 3 nights in county. That's the whole record. Okay? And no, I'm not running from anything. I mean, before this, I'm an ordinary guy. I build walls for other people's houses, and I raise a kid. That's it. Daniel nodded slowly. He glanced in the mirror at his cousin, who was watching out the window, her head turned carefully away so that neither man could see her face. Mia was asleep again. She had been awake for about 20 minutes total, cumulatively, over the entire state of Kansas. And you, what does he do? Her father. I haven't told him yet, Elena said quietly from the back seat. I would like you to tell him, Lena. Elena was quiet for a long second. She watched a silo go past. Then another. My father, she said, is Alexander Valentin Cross of AVC Holdings. Ryan felt his stomach drop slowly, the way a stone drops in water. He knew the name. Everyone who had ever worked a job site in the last 10 years knew the name. AVC Holdings was a real estate company that wasn't really a real estate company. It was a holding firm that owned a real estate company, and an energy company, and a private security firm, and a shipping line, and, rumor went, about a third of whatever branch of government happened to be in session that year. Ryan had installed drywall, once, in a building owned by a subsidiary of AVC Holdings. He remembered the logo on the invoice, in a very specific shade of blue, like arterial blood if arterial blood were a color designed by marketing people. Oh, he heard himself say. Yes, Elena said. Oh. The man I was supposed to marry, Elena went on, flatly, because she had clearly decided to get through it in one motion, is Peter Hollis, of Hollis International. They've been trying to get to their gas lines for 6 years. The wedding would have fixed their pipeline problem. My father would have gotten what he wanted. I would have... She stopped. Anyway, that's the shape of it. Peter Hollis, Daniel repeated very softly. That's the boy he picked. Yes. Lena, he's 47. I'm aware of how old Peter is, Danny. The last wife? I know about the last wife. Does I know about the last wife, Danny? Ryan didn't ask. He did not need to ask. There was a particular way that Elena had said the words, the last wife, that told Ryan everything he needed to know about what had happened to the last wife, and he felt, for the first time in 3 days, a clean, hot anger that had nothing to do with fear. Okay, Daniel said, after a minute. Okay. Good. Good to know all of it. Now we know. Now we can think. He drove for another mile in silence. Lena? Yes. You can stay with Mama as long as you want. That is not a question. I want to say that out loud because you're the kind of person who will not believe it unless somebody says it out loud. You can stay forever. Do you understand me? Elena didn't answer. Do you understand me, Lena? I understand you, Danny. Good. Ryan. Yes. You can stay with Mama for as long as you and your daughter need as well. Different reasons. Same offer. My mother raised me to believe that if a man shows up on your porch holding someone else's child, you feed him and you give him a bed, and then you figure out the rest in the morning. You are the man holding the child in this metaphor. I hope that's clear. That's clear. You all right with that? I'm all right with that. He didn't say thank you. Something told him Daniel didn't want to hear it, and Daniel, glancing over, nodded, the briefest possible nod, and turned off the highway onto a 2-lane road that climbed into the foothills. Rose's house, when they pulled up to it, was not the house Ryan had been imagining. He had been imagining, without quite knowing why, a cabin, one of those log and stone places that existed in the imagination of anyone who'd never lived in Colorado. What he found instead was a low ranch house in a clearing on a gravel road, with a front porch that had been added later, a vegetable garden gone to seed at this time of year, and a golden retriever who barreled off the porch at a speed that was frankly unreasonable for a dog who looked, up close, to be at least 12.
Harold, Daniel said, getting out. Harold, sit! Sit, you idiot! Oh, forget it! Harold did not sit. Harold barreled past Daniel, past Ryan, past Elena, and straight to Mia, who had been lifted out of the car and was standing on the gravel rubbing her eyes. Harold stopped 2 feet from Mia. He sat. He looked at her. His tail moved very slowly, side to side. Mia looked at Harold. Is that a dog? That is a dog. He's bigger than me. He is. Can I touch him? Very gently, right on the forehead, not the nose. Mia reached out, solemn as a judge, and laid the flat of her hand on Harold's forehead. Harold closed his eyes in what appeared to be religious ecstasy and leaned slowly, his whole 80-pound weight into her, and Mia, who was 34 pounds and who had been braced for something less, went down onto her butt on the gravel with an oof, and Harold landed on top of her with his whole body, and Mia, instead of crying, started laughing. She laughed for about 30 seconds straight. It was the first time Ryan had heard her laugh, really laugh, the belly laugh, the whole body laugh, since he'd thrown her across a roof. Elena, standing next to Ryan on the gravel, made a small sound. He glanced over. She was smiling with her hand over her mouth, and there were tears running silently down her face, and she was not trying to stop them. Harold's a good dog, Daniel said, almost apologetically, from the car. I see that, Ryan said. Rose met them at the door. She was a small woman with white hair cut short, and a face that looked at first severe and then didn't. She was leaning on a cane. She was wearing an enormous gray cardigan that was clearly a man's. She looked at Elena for a long second without moving, and then her face did something complicated. Crumpled, settled, crumpled again, and she reached out both arms without a word, and Elena, dropping her duffel bag on the porch, walked into them. "Oh, my girl," Rose said into her hair. "Oh, my girl, my girl, my girl." It went on like that for a minute. Ryan stood on the porch with Mia wrapped around his leg, and Harold pressed against his other knee, and he looked very hard at a point above Rose's mailbox because he did not trust himself to look at the 2 women. Eventually, Rose let go of Elena and wiped her own eyes, briskly, with the sleeve of the cardigan. She turned to Ryan. She looked him up and down. She looked at Mia. "And who are you?" "Ryan Carter, ma'am, and this is my daughter Mia." "Mia. What a beautiful name. You look like a very important person, Mia. Are you a very important person?" Mia considered. "I'm 4. "That'll do," said Rose. She stepped back from the door. "All of you, inside, out of the cold. Ryan, set that bag down. The floor's been dirty for 40 years. It can stand 1 more day. Lena, the tea's already on. Mia, darling, there's a Scotty puppy in the Yadro cabinet by the fireplace. It's a statue, don't get excited, and you may take it down very gently and bring it to me, and we'll see about finding you something to eat. Daniel, stop standing there like a fence post and bring in the rest of the things. Come. All of you. Come." They came. The next 3 days passed in a kind of warm blur that Ryan had stopped believing was available to him. Rose's house had 4 bedrooms, 2 of which were empty, and she insisted on giving the larger of the 2 to Ryan and Mia and the smaller to Elena. Mia fell asleep the first night in a twin bed with a handmade quilt and Harold snoring on the floor beside her, and she did not wake up for 14 hours. Ryan, in the bed next to hers, finally slept. Real sleep, dreamless and deep, for the first time since he'd opened a text message in the dark. He woke the first morning to the smell of bacon. He came out of the bedroom in the shirt he'd slept in and socks. He felt, for a second, disoriented. He had not woken up to the smell of bacon in someone else's house since he was maybe 17 years old. Rose was at the stove. Elena was at the kitchen table with her bad wrist now in a proper brace. Daniel had driven to an urgent care clinic the night before and come back with it, along with antibiotics and a printed sheet of instructions. And with a coffee cup she was holding very tightly in her good hand. Her hair was washed. She was wearing a sweatshirt that said Grand Lake Fire Department across the chest. She looked, Ryan thought, almost like a different person. And then she lifted her eyes to his, and they were the same eyes, and he understood with a small private jolt that it was him that was the different person, for a second, for seeing her that way. He poured himself coffee without asking. "Good morning," Rose said. "Sit, eat."
If you eat less than 2 eggs in this house, I will take it personally. Daniel is already at school. He teaches children to care about the Treaty of Ghent, and it costs him most of his morning. Yes, ma'am. Don't ma'am me. Rose. Rose. Better. He sat. He ate 2 eggs. He ate 3. Mia came padding out in her dinosaur pajamas, dragging Mr. Buns, and climbed into his lap without a word and ate half a piece of bacon and put her head against his chest, and within 2 minutes was asleep again. Elena watched them. She's exhausted, Elena said quietly. Yeah. We all are. Yeah. Ryan. Yeah. I want to talk to you later when she wakes up, when we have a minute. Okay. She nodded, once. She looked down at her coffee. Rose, at the stove, did not turn around, but Ryan got the sense she was paying very close attention to a pan of scrambled eggs that did not require close attention. The minute came in the late afternoon. Mia had been won over completely by Harold and by Rose's linen closet, which contained, it turned out, a shoebox of Daniel's old toys from when he was 7, including a plastic horse with a detachable tail that Mia had now renamed Sebastian and was introducing to Mr. Buns in the living room. Rose sat in her chair by the fire, reading a mystery paperback, occasionally looking up to make a comment about the weather. The dog snored. The light through the windows was the color of honey. Elena put on her coat. She came out onto the porch, where Ryan was sitting in a rocking chair drinking a second cup of coffee and trying to remember the last time he'd sat in a rocking chair without pain. She sat down in the other chair. She did not rock. She did not put her good hand under the brace, though he could tell she wanted to. How's your wrist? Honestly, it hurts less. The brace is helping, and the whatever they gave me. Good. Ryan. Yeah. I have to do something that you're going to hate. He looked at her. He had been, at some level, waiting for this sentence for about 96 hours, ever since she'd opened her mouth in the diner in Harriston to say I have to. He'd thought at the time she'd meant the phone call. He had known, even then, that she'd meant something bigger than the phone call. Okay, he said carefully. Tell me. I can't just disappear. I thought I could. I thought that if I just got far enough away and stayed quiet enough and didn't make any noise, he'd let me go. Eventually. People told me that once. Just keep your head down, Lena. He loses interest. But I was lying to myself. My father doesn't lose interest, Ryan. My father keeps lists. He keeps lists for decades. A man at his company embezzled $6,000 in 2004, and 2 years ago, in 2023, my father found him and ruined him. I was in the room when he made that phone call. 2 years ago, 20 years later, for $6,000. Elena, let me finish, please. Okay. Right now, at this moment, my father is sitting in his office and he is deciding what to do. About me. About you. About the waiter. About any of the 43 people who were in that restaurant on Thursday and who might have heard something he doesn't want them to have heard. He is deciding, Ryan, and until I give him a reason not to, he's going to keep deciding, and the answers he comes up with are not going to be good for us, for any of us. What are you proposing? She did not answer for a second. She watched her breath make a small cloud in front of her face. Then another. I am proposing, she said, that I make this too expensive for him to finish. Meaning I go public. Meaning I call a reporter. Meaning I sit down in front of a camera and I say, in full sentences, with my face on the screen and my name under my chin, that Alexander Valentin Cross of AVC Holdings attempted to force his daughter into a marriage with Peter Hollis of Hollis International for the express purpose of securing gas pipeline access through the Hollis corridor in the Gulf. I say it on the record. I say it twice. And then I do it a third time, on a different network, so he cannot kill one story. And then, her voice wobbled for the first time. And then I say something worse, something I have been carrying for a long time and I have not told even Daniel. Ryan looked at her. What's the worst thing, Elena? I have evidence of something from 3 years ago, from before all of this. I have copies of emails that were meant to be shredded. I know where the originals are. I know who wrote them. I know who they were sent to. I know what it would cost my father if any one of those emails ended up in front of a federal prosecutor. Why do you have them? Because I was 17 when I first made a copy of one of my father's documents. And I was 18 when I made the second. And I was 19 when I made the third. And at some point, Ryan, at some point around when I turned 20, I stopped being able to tell myself that I was just the daughter. I stopped being able to tell myself that I didn't know. I started putting copies in places. In safe deposit boxes, most of them under different names. I haven't looked at them in 3 years. I have tried to forget about them. But I didn't forget. I know exactly where they are. All of them.
Jesus, Ryan said. Jesus, Elena. Yes. Does he know? I don't know. I don't think so. If he knew, he would not have tried to marry me to Peter Hollis. He would have had me committed 6 years ago. He is going to realize that I have them approximately 11 seconds after my face appears on a television screen, and he is going to come at me, at us, harder than he has ever come at anything in his life. But by then, Elena said, and she turned in her chair finally to face him fully, and her eyes were extremely clear. The story will be too big to make go away. The story will be its own weather. You can kill a reporter. You cannot kill a news cycle. You can pay off a network. You cannot pay off the internet. The second I open my mouth on camera, I become a live thing, Ryan, something nobody can afford to touch. That is the plan. Make myself radioactive. Make myself the kind of problem that hurts him to solve. Ryan stared at her. And in between, he said slowly. In between. In between the first camera and the moment you become radioactive. What happens in between, Elena? She looked at him. Her mouth was a line. In between, she said, is the dangerous part. He sat back in his chair. He looked at the snow starting, very lightly, on the pines at the edge of Rose's property. He watched a single flake land on the porch railing and melt. How long is the in-between? 12 to 48 hours, from the first interview to the wide pickup. 48 hours. At the outside, probably less. But I'm budgeting for worst case. And in those 48 hours, what does your father do? He does what he has always done. He sends people. He makes calls. He tries to find a lever. He tries to find someone to hold over me so that I recant on the second interview. Someone to bring to the front door. You understand? I understand. Ryan looked down at his coffee. The coffee was cold. He drank it anyway. Elena. Yes. Me and Mia. Yes. We're the lever. Yes. He nodded slowly. He did not bottom look at her. You're trying to tell me, he said, that you want to do a thing that will bring every bad man in your father's address book to whatever doorstep they can find me at, within 12 to 48 hours of you sitting down with a reporter. Yes. And you're asking my permission? No, she said quietly. I'm telling you I'm going to do it, and I'm asking what you want me to do to keep you and Mia alive in the in-between. Because I will do whatever that is. Anything. If you tell me you want to take Mia and a stack of cash and disappear into Canada for 2 months until the story is too big for anyone to care about two people named Carter, I will drive you to the border myself. If you tell me you want to fly to your mother's in Florida with a different name, I will buy the ticket. If you tell me you want to leave tonight and never speak to me again, I will help you pack. That is the offer I'm making, Ryan. That is the whole offer. You choose. He didn't answer for a long time. The snow was coming down harder now. He could see Mia through the living room window, lying on her belly on the rug with Harold, and Mr. Buns and Sebastian, the plastic horse, were arranged in some elaborate diorama on the coffee table that probably had a story attached to it. He thought about her face on the bus when she'd said, "Daddy, are we going home?" He thought about the way she had laughed at Harold on the gravel driveway. He thought about the men in the alley and the black SUV at the corner of 31st and Parnell. He thought about, of all things, a pair of shoes in a fancy restaurant on the 40th floor of a building, and a daughter running for a service elevator, and a waiter who had given her $60 and told her not to say his name. Elena. Yes. I'm not running to Canada. Ryan. I'm not running to Florida. I'm not hiding Mia in some motel in Kansas for 2 months while you do the bravest thing anybody ever did on a television. I'm not going to be one more person who let you walk into a room alone. Her voice was very small. Ryan,
You said anything? Yes. Then here's anything. He turned in his chair to face her, finally. The rocker creaked under him. Mia and I stay here, with Rose and with Danny. Danny's careful. He's thought about this, I can tell. I trust him. And this house is in the middle of nowhere, and there is a road you can watch from the porch and a dog who barks at squirrels, and as a defensive position I have seen worse. I have to be in front of the camera, Ryan. I have to be there. I can't send a letter. That won't work. It has to be my face. I know. I know it has to be your face. So you go. You do your 2 interviews. You say every single word of it. You say more than you've told me. You make yourself radioactive and then you come home. But you don't do it alone. You take Danny and you take me. I come with you. No. Yes. Ryan, if something happens to you, Mia, if something happens to me, Mia will have a bed in this house with Rose, who will fight my ghost if my ghost shows up trying to take her, and a cousin who has quietly helped you run for your life, and a woman who, if I am reading any of this right at all, has already decided to be a mother to my kid if she needs to be. Tell me I'm wrong, Elena. Elena didn't say anything. She was looking at him with a face he had not seen on her before. Tell me I'm wrong, Elena. You're not wrong. Okay. Then it's covered. Mia is covered. That part of the math is done. The rest of the math is the 2 of us walking into a news station in a city somewhere and telling the truth, and the 2 of us walking out again and driving back up this goddamn mountain and then eating whatever Rose cooks for dinner and sleeping in her house until the story does what the story does and going on from there. Ryan, what? You are not the man I thought I was going to find in that apartment. I know. I'm sorry. No, that is not what I meant. I know what you meant. She looked at him for a long time. The snow had started to come in sideways a little, catching under the porch overhang. Her breath was white, and his breath was white. And somewhere inside the house, faintly, Mia was laughing at something the dog had done. Ryan, Elena said, I don't know if I can do this without you. Good. Then don't. I wasn't raised to need people. Me either, honestly. That's not the same thing. I know it's not, Elena. She nodded. She looked at her hand in her lap, the good one. She stretched the fingers out. She curled them back in. When, he said. When what? When do we do it? The interview. I was going to make the call tomorrow. There's a reporter, a woman. She used to work at the Times. She's at a nonprofit investigative outfit now. I know her. She used to be a friend of my mother's. She has wanted a piece of my father for 10 years and has never had a source who would go on the record. I call her tomorrow. She tapes with me as fast as she can get a studio. Probably 2 days, maybe 3. And then it goes live and everything starts. 3 days. 3 days. Ryan looked out at the snow. Okay, he said. Okay? Okay, Elena. She didn't say anything else. Neither did he. After a while, she did what he would remember. Later, as the first thing she had done of her own volition, uncornered, unasked, since the moment he had pulled her out of an alley. She reached across the space between the 2 rocking chairs, very slowly, and she took his hand in her good one. She didn't hold it tight. She didn't weave her fingers through his. She just laid her hand on top of his, palm to the back of his hand, and she let the cold of her fingers settle into the warmth of his skin, and she left it there. They sat like that, not talking, until the snow made the railing disappear. Inside the house, Rose set a pie in the oven, and the smell of butter and apples began, slowly, to push out through the wall, and Harold came to the screen door and whined once, softly, as if to remind them that pie was a thing that was happening and that they were both technically invited. Elena squeezed Ryan's hand once, very lightly. Then she let go, and she stood up, and she went inside to help Rose with dinner. Ryan stayed on the porch a while longer. He watched the snow. He watched the road. He watched, across the bowl of the clearing, a single pickup truck pass, far away, on the county road, a farmer going home probably in the dusk. And he watched it until its taillights were gone. And then he went inside too, and he closed the door behind him, and he locked it. The reporter's name was Marion Pell, and she flew into Denver on a Tuesday morning on a plane Elena had paid for with a credit card in a cousin's name. And when she stepped off the jetway, she looked, Ryan thought, exactly like someone who had been waiting 10 years for this phone call. She was about 60, gray at the temples, a short raincoat over a gray blazer, flat shoes, the kind a woman buys when she has given up on what anyone thinks about her shoes. She shook Ryan's hand once, firmly, at the Avis counter, and she said, "I'm sorry for what's about to happen to you." And she meant it, and that was the end of the pleasantries. They drove her up to Rose's house. They sat her at the kitchen table. Rose made her eggs without asking. Marion ate them, took out a small recorder and a legal pad, and looked at Elena. "All right, kid," she said, "start at the top. Take as long as you need." Elena talked for 4 hours. Ryan sat in the armchair by the fire for most of it. He didn't listen to the words exactly. He had already heard most of them, or versions of them, over the 3 days since Elena had told him her plan on the porch. What he listened to was her voice, the way it caught at certain names, the way it steadied when she got to specifics, a date, a street address, the particular font on a particular document that she had photographed when she was 19. By the end of the 4th hour, her voice did not catch anymore. Ryan understood, watching her, that something had been locked away in Elena Cross for a long time, and that as she was speaking, it was not being released so much as transferred, put into another woman's hands, to carry for a while. When it was over, Marion sat back in her chair. She looked at her legal pad. She looked at Elena. "Jesus, kid," she said quietly. "Yes."
Okay.
"Here's what I want to do. Tomorrow morning, I want you in a studio in Denver. I've got a cameraman. He's a friend. He owes me several favors, and he also owes my daughter a favor, which is better. We tape a sit-down, clean, long form. I don't run it yet. I put it in a cloud storage I have set up for exactly this kind of material, with 3 backup copies at 3 different addresses, one of which is a safe deposit box you will never visit and do not need to know about. Then, the second I have the tape secured, I send a very short, very polite email to a press contact at AVC Holdings. I tell them I'm running a piece. I give them 48 hours to comment. I do this not because I think they will comment, they won't, but because that email is the starting gun, Elena. The minute he sees that email, the clock starts. You understand?"
I understand.
48 hours later, whether they comment or not, I publish. It'll be long-form print first. That's what my outfit does. And within 6 hours of that going live, you do your second appearance. Not with me, with a network. A big one. I have a producer there. I've talked to her. She knows something's coming. She doesn't know what. I'll put her on a plane the day before the print piece drops. She'll be ready. Okay, in between my email to AVC and the print piece going up, you are off the map. All of you. No phones, no cards. You stay where you are, or you go somewhere else, but you do not move in a traceable way. If you have to use a phone, you use a burner and you throw it in a river when you're done. Do you have burners? I'll get some, Ryan said. Good man. What do I do? Ryan said. During the interview. Marion looked at him for a long second. Mr. Carter, I have known you for 6 hours. I have a piece of advice for you, and I want you to take it seriously. Okay. I have done a lot of these stories. Not this big, but enough. The men who helped these women. The boyfriends, the friends, the brothers. The random strangers who did one brave thing. They have a very particular kind of future ahead of them. Some of them handle it. Some of them don't. The ones who handle it, in my experience, are the ones who make peace very early with the fact that what they did was not a beginning. It was a finishing. You finished something. You got this young woman to my kitchen table. That was your part. When she sits in front of my camera tomorrow, she sits alone. You will be in another room. You will not be in her sightline. You will not be in the tape. You are going to go home to your daughter, and you are going to live a life in which no one but the 4 people in this room and a handful of my people, under seal, ever knows your name in connection with this story. That is your job now. You already did the other job. Ryan looked at her. I don't want the camera, Miss Pell. I know you don't. I've met your type. I wanted to say it anyway. Yeah. All right then. Elena, get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be the longest day of your life, and I say that as a woman who has had several. Each. The tape happened. Ryan did not see it happen. He sat in a green room 2 doors down the hall of a borrowed studio in a converted warehouse in Denver, with a paper cup of coffee getting cold in his hand, and he watched the clock above the door tick from 9:47 to 2:13 without getting up. Daniel sat next to him for some of it. Daniel had taken a personal day from school. He read a paperback. He did not turn many pages. When Elena came out, her eyes were red and her face was bone white, and she walked straight to Ryan and pressed her forehead against his chest for about 10 seconds without saying anything. Ryan did not put his arms around her. He couldn't trust himself with that particular gesture in front of her cousin, in a warehouse in Denver, with a reporter he had met the day before standing in the doorway watching them. He just laid his hand on the back of her head once and said, "You did it," and she nodded against his shirt, and that was that. Marion sent her email to AVC Holdings at 4:02 p.m. Mountain Time that Tuesday. The clock started. They drove back up the mountain in the Subaru. Nobody spoke for the first 20 miles. Elena sat in the back seat this time, staring out the window at nothing. Ryan drove. Daniel rode shotgun and watched the rearview mirror. At a gas station outside Boulder, Ryan bought 3 prepaid phones with cash and 1 bag of Twizzlers that he gave to Mia when they got home and did not explain. That night, Rose made meatloaf. Mia ate 2 helpings. She was wearing Daniel's old Cub Scout shirt from 1991 that Rose had found in a bin in the basement and cut down to size, and she was calling herself Ranger Mia and commanding Harold to perform duties he did not understand. And for 1 hour, Ryan was able to watch his daughter and not think about the email that had, by then, almost certainly been read. Around 9, after Mia had been put to bed, the landline rang. Everyone in the living room froze. Rose picked it up on the 3rd ring. She listened for a moment. "Yes," she said, in a voice Ryan had not heard her use before. "Yes? This is she?" A pause. "No." Another pause. "I said no. I don't know who you are, and I don't care to. This is my home, young man, and if you call it again, I will have the phone number traced, which the sheriff in this county is a personal friend of mine, and will do as a favor, and I will make your evening considerably less pleasant than it is at present. Good night." She hung up. She stood there with her hand on the receiver. She was 76 years old. Ryan watched her draw one long breath in through her nose and let it out, and her hand on the phone was not shaking, not at all. "Man's voice," she said. "Wanted to speak to Daniel about, quote, a family matter. Didn't give a name." "Mama," Daniel said. "I'm all right, Danny. Take your hand off my arm. I'm all right." "Mama, they have this number." "Well, yes, Daniel. I assumed they might." Ryan stood up. He was already moving toward the front door before he had thought about it. "I'll walk the road," he said. "I want to see what's out there." "Not alone," Daniel said. "Yes, alone. You stay here. Elena stays here. If anything happens at the house, I need you to be the one inside it, not me. Harold comes with me." Harold, hearing his name, stood up and stretched. "Ryan," Elena said. "I'll be 20 minutes. I'll whistle when I come back up. 2 short, 1 long. If you don't hear that exactly, you don't open the door." He took Daniel's flashlight off the hook by the door. He took a baseball bat that had been leaning next to the umbrella stand for probably 30 years, that Rose had never once mentioned, that Ryan was at peace with not asking about. He went out into the cold. The road was quiet. The snow had stopped 2 days ago, and most of it was still on the ground, silver under the half moon. Harold trotted beside him, breath steaming, unexcited. Ryan walked the length of the driveway and out to the county road and stood there listening. Nothing. A single set of taillights very far off, heading away, a farmer or a contractor or nobody he would ever know about. He walked another half mile up the county road in the direction of the nearest neighbor. He walked back. Harold, by the end, was clearly of the opinion that this was an unnecessary outing. Ryan whistled at the porch. 2 short, 1 long. Daniel opened the door. "Nothing," Ryan said. Yet. The next 36 hours were the slowest Ryan had ever lived. Rose cooked a great deal. Daniel took another day from school and mostly sat at the kitchen window with a book he did not read. Elena cleaned things. Ryan had not, until those 36 hours, understood that a person could clean things as a coping mechanism. But by the second afternoon, Elena had organized Rose's entire spice cabinet, wiped down the inside of the refrigerator, and was working her way, slowly, one-handed, through a stack of old magazines on the coffee table. Mia, for her part, was thriving, and that, Ryan thought, was the strangest and most painful gift of the whole mess. She had Harold.
She had a grown woman who was willing to play Ranger Mia with her for an hour at a stretch. She had a great aunt by affection who let her crack the eggs. She had a porch swing and a mountain view, and a bedroom where she fell asleep on her own without crying for the first time in maybe a year. Ryan watched her, and he understood something he did not have a word for. Something about the fact that a child can only know what she is given, and that what she had been given for 4 days was a kind of wholeness he had not been able to put together on a single paycheck in a city. On the second morning, Thursday, Marian called the burner. Ryan answered. "It goes up tomorrow at 6 a.m. Eastern," she said. "I wanted you to have the time. Tell her." "I'll tell her." "Mr. Carter." "Yeah." "Be where you're going to be tomorrow at 6 a.m. and stay there." She hung up. He told Elena. Elena sat down at this kitchen table and put her face in her hands for about a minute. Then she lifted her head, and her face was dry, and she said, Okay, Ryan, okay." Like a woman running through a pre-flight checklist. She was ready. She had been ready since the porch. That night, nobody slept. Ryan sat on the floor of Mia's room with his back against her bed, watching her sleep. Harold snored beside him. Around 3 in the morning, Elena came in silently, in sock feet, and sat down on the floor beside him and leaned her head very carefully against his shoulder. They did not speak. After a while, she said, "If this goes badly, it's not going to go badly. If it does, Elena, if it does, I want you to know that these last 4 days have been I have had 26 years of being a particular kind of lonely, and these 4 days were the first time I was a different kind of lonely. Thank you." He didn't know what to say to that. He looked at his daughter's face in the blue light from the window, and he said carefully, "Don't put that on a past tense yet." "I'm not. I'm saying it now because I might not get another quiet moment." "You're going to get a lot of quiet moments." "We'll see." She stayed another few minutes. Then she stood up, soundlessly, and went back down the hall. The story went live at 4 a.m. Mountain Time. Daniel watched it load on his laptop at the kitchen table with the house still dark. Ryan came in and stood behind him. The headline was long and clinical and did not use Elena's name until the third paragraph, and that was somehow what made it feel real. The absence of drama in the words that were about to blow everything up. The first tremor came 90 minutes later when a wire service picked it up. The second came at 7 when a cable morning show ran a short segment. By 9, the phrase AVC Holdings was trending on 3 platforms. By 11, a senator Ryan had never heard of had released a statement calling for an investigation. By 1 in the afternoon, a second woman, a former executive assistant at one of AVC's subsidiaries, had come forward with her own account of something slightly different but tonally identical, and Marian texted Ryan 2 words that he kept on the burner for the rest of his life. The dam. Elena did her second interview at 2 p.m. It aired at 6 p.m. Eastern. A producer Marian trusted had come to the house. The house, not a studio, because Daniel had convinced Marian that putting Elena in a car on the interstate a second time was a risk they didn't need to take, and set up 2 lights and a single camera in Rose's living room, in front of Rose's faded green curtains. And Elena had done the interview with her wrist brace in her lap, and her good hand folded over it, and her voice very quiet and very clear. Ryan watched from the hallway. He saw her on the small preview monitor. She did not look like a woman in trouble. She looked like a woman who had put something down, finally, that she had been carrying alone. When it aired at 4 Mountain Time, all 4 of them watched it in the living room together, sitting very close, Mia asleep in Elena's lap. At 4:23 p.m., while Elena was still on the screen, the landline rang. Rose did not pick it up. At 4:26, Ryan's burner rang. He almost didn't answer. It could only be Marian, and whatever Marian had to say could wait, he thought. But then he looked at the number, and it wasn't Marian's, and he answered out of a low, cold instinct. Ryan Carter. The voice on the other end was low and dry and entirely without heat. It was, Ryan thought instantly, the voice of a man reading off a page. "Mr. Carter? I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Cross. I'd like to speak with his daughter. Would you hand her the phone, please?" Ryan's spine went cold. "How did you get this number?" "Would you hand her the phone, Mr. Carter?" "No." "I'd strongly advise you to put her on." "I'd strongly advise you," Ryan said, in a voice he didn't know was his,
to never call this number again. Whatever Mr. Cross wants to say to his daughter, he can say in a press release. He hung up. He held the phone in his hand. It was shaking slightly. He realized the shaking was his hand, not the phone. Elena was already on her feet. Daniel was already at the window. Rose had put down her paperback very slowly, as if it were fragile. "What did they say?" Elena said. "They asked for you by name. Ryan, they have your number. That's a burner I bought with cash 4 days ago. They have a burner number that I bought with cash." "I know." "Ryan." "I know, Elena." Daniel turned from the window. He was already moving toward the coat closet. "We leave," he said. "Now. All of us. Separate cars. We go to the cabin." "The cabin?" Ryan said. "A friend of Mama's. An old friend. There's a cabin about an hour north of here she lets us use in the summer. It's not in her name. It's not in anyone's name we're connected to. There's no landline, no cell signal for half a mile in any direction. I should have driven us up there on Tuesday. I didn't, and that's my mistake. And I am fixing it in the next 15 minutes. Mama, you and Mia in the truck with me. Ryan, you and Lena in the Subaru. Mama, pack for 3 days. Go. Go. Whoa. The cabin was exactly what Daniel had said it was. A small, square, A-frame thing on a rise of land above a frozen pond, with a wood stove and a generator and a kerosene lamp on the kitchen table and no cell service and no cars on the road. They got there at 9 at night. They got Mia into a bed upstairs in a loft with a quilt that smelled like cedar, and Harold on the floor beside her, and Rose in the second bedroom. Daniel took the couch. Ryan and Elena sat at the kitchen table with the kerosene lamp between them and did not sleep for the second night in a row. At 11:47 p.m., Daniel's laptop, running on a signal booster he had bought, apparently, for exactly this kind of contingency 3 years ago, pinged with a news alert. He read it. His face changed. "What?" Elena said. "The senator, Hollis's senator, the one who held up the pipeline bill for them 4 years ago." Daniel swallowed. He just announced he is, quote, suspending his support for all legislation tied to Hollis International pending a federal review. He released a statement at 11:30 Eastern. He used the word abhorrent. Elena made a sound that was not a laugh and not a cry, and was something in between. "Danny, there's more. A second wire service has the documents, the ones from the 2019 account, the shell company Shuffle. Marion gave them the first tranche this afternoon. They've been running it through lawyers. They're going live with their piece at 6 in the morning. Mama." He looked across the room. "Mama, the federal piece it's going to hit by tomorrow evening. It's going to be everywhere." "Good," Rose said from the doorway. At 2:33 a.m., a car came up the road. Ryan heard it first. He had been sitting at the window for 2 hours. The road was gravel, then dirt, then, for the last quarter mile before the cabin, a rutted 2-track that nobody drove on unless they meant to. The headlights came up the rise slow. Too slow. "Daniel," he said. Daniel was beside him in 3 seconds. "Harold," Daniel said quietly over his shoulder. Harold stood up. The car stopped at the bottom of the rise. The headlights went off. For about 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then a single door opened and closed, and a single set of footsteps, one person, not 2, not 4, came up the 2-track, unhurried, unhidden. "One man," Ryan said. "Upstairs," Daniel said to Elena. "Now. Mia's room. Lock the door. Go." Elena went. Daniel picked up the old Marlin that he had pulled out of the hall closet when they'd arrived and not, until this moment, loaded. He loaded it now. He did it the way a man does a thing he has done since he was 11 and never stopped being able to do. He did not look dramatic. He looked, Ryan thought, like a history teacher holding a rifle. The footsteps came up onto the porch. They stopped. They did not knock. A voice, clear, carrying, not loud. "Mr. Carter? Mr. Daniel Whitlock? Ma'am? My name is Jerome Albin. I'm a federal agent. I'd like to come inside. I'm alone. I'm not armed at the moment, but I'm about to reach into my coat for identification, and I want to do that where you can see it through the window." Ryan and Daniel looked at each other. Daniel, slowly, flipped the porch light on. The man standing on the porch was in his 50s, short, bald, wearing a bad brown overcoat and the tiredest face Ryan had ever seen on a stranger. He held up, carefully, with one gloved hand, a leather wallet opened. Daniel stepped sideways to the door and cracked it 2 inches on the chain. ID. Photo side up, sir. Through the gap, badge number 4412. You can call it in, but you're going to have to come down to the road to get a cell signal, and that's a conversation I'd rather have inside. Ryan read the ID over Daniel's shoulder. It was real. He knew, somehow, it was real. He couldn't have said how. Daniel let him in. Agent Albin stepped inside. He stamped snow off his boots. He unbuttoned his coat. He did not sit down until Daniel gestured him at the kitchen chair. Miss Cross upstairs? Yes. I'd like to speak with her. All of you. Together. I drove up here tonight because I've been on the phone since 9:30 with 3 different U.S. attorneys, and I have a very short window before a lot of people who don't work for me start trying to get to Miss Cross, and I would like to be the one who gets to her first. May I ask her to come down? Daniel, after a long second, nodded. He called up the stairs. Elena came down. She stopped halfway. She saw Agent Albin. Her hand tightened on the banister. It's all right, Lena, Rose said from the hallway. I believe this man. Miss Cross. Albin stood up. Ma'am, I'll be brief, because I know you are tired and I am too. At 11 o'clock tonight Eastern, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York unsealed an indictment against your father and 4 of his associates. The indictment is broad. It's been prepared for over a year. I have worked on the investigation for 16 months. Your interview this evening and the documents Ms. Pell provided my office 3 days ago accelerated a timeline that was already in motion. Do you understand me? Yes. Your father was taken into custody at his home at 10 past 11. He is currently at a federal facility in Manhattan. He is not going home tonight. He will likely not go home for some time. Do you understand? Elena did not answer. Her hand on the banister was white. Ma'am? Yes. As of 2 hours ago, ma'am, there is no longer any person paying men to look for you. The whole room was very quiet. However, Albin raised one finger. That does not mean the next 48 hours are going to be uneventful. Some of the men who have been on your file for the last 96 hours may not have received current instructions. Some of them may not have anyone left to receive instructions from. The safest thing for all of you is to come with me, tonight, down the mountain to a hotel I have arranged for you under federal protection, and stay there until the news cycle and my agents have finished their work. I would like to do that in the next 40 minutes. I have 2 vehicles at the bottom of your road. He looked at all of them. I understand that I am a stranger, and I am asking you to trust me. I have been doing this job for 23 years, Miss Cross. I came alone tonight specifically so you could see my face before you saw anyone else's. Your father's people have not been gentle with women like you, and I did not want the first federal knock on your door to come from 3 men you had never seen. That's the only reason I drove up this road by myself at 2 in the morning. Elena came down the rest of the stairs slowly. She walked past Daniel. She walked past Ryan. She stopped in front of Agent Albin. She looked up at his face for a long moment. Then she sat down very heavily at the kitchen table, and she put her good hand flat on the wood, and she said, "Tell me what happens next." It took 3 hours to pack up the cabin and get down the mountain. Mia woke up once and asked why it was still dark, and Ryan told her they were going on another small adventure, and she said, "Is it going to be as scary as the lava one?" And Ryan said, "No, Bug. That was the scariest one. There aren't any scarier ones after that." She went back to sleep in the truck with Harold's head on her lap. In the motel in Boulder at 5:30 in the morning, Ryan sat on the edge of a double bed and watched a wall of muted television. 4 different channels, the same face. A man in his early 60s with a careful gray haircut being walked in handcuffs out of a building Ryan had installed drywall in, once. The chyron scrolled below him. A word Ryan had never expected to hear about a man like that, indicted, kept repeating. Elena came out of his bathroom in a motel robe. Her hair was wet. Her wrist brace was on the dresser for the first time in a week. She came and sat on the bed next to him. She didn't look at the television. She looked at her hands. "Is it real?" she said. "It's real. Say it again." "It's real, Elena." Ryan, yeah. I don't know who I am tomorrow. Me neither. That's supposed to be the part we're grateful for. I know. I don't feel grateful. Not yet. She nodded slowly. Mia, in the other bed, rolled over and mumbled something in her sleep. Harold, on the floor between the beds, thumped his tail once against the carpet. Elena, without looking at Ryan, reached over and took his hand. This time she did thread her fingers through his. This time she held on. They sat like that for a long time, while the sun came up behind the motel curtains and a man neither of them would ever meet again. In a federal building 2,000 miles away, sat in a small bright room and waited for a lawyer who, for the first time in his life, was going to be late. Outside, a little past 7, a couple arguing about a rental car in the parking lot walked past the window, unaware that anything interesting had happened anywhere in the world the night before. Somewhere down the hall, a maid pushed a cart. The motel coffee maker on the dresser clicked once, finished, and went silent. Ryan let go of Elena's hand. He stood up. He pulled the curtain back 1 inch and looked out at the parking lot. A gray sedan, a minivan, a kid loading a cooler into a pickup. An ordinary morning in an ordinary country. He let the curtain fall. "I'm going to make coffee," he said. "You want some?" "Yes." "Okay." He made coffee. She drank it. The television, still muted, kept playing. And in the bed by the wall, Mia slept on, undisturbed, one arm wrapped around Mr. Buns and the other hanging off the side of the mattress, her small, warm hand resting unconsciously on the dog's broad back. 14 months later, on a Saturday in early spring, Ryan Carter stood in the backyard of a small rented house outside Boulder, scraping burnt cheese off a grill he had bought at a garage sale for $30, and trying to decide whether to tell his daughter that the tooth she had just lost was, in fact, the same premium tooth the fairy had paid for a year and a half ago in a motel room, or whether it was simpler to let the whole thing stand as a miracle. He went with miracle. Life had, in the way of lives, gotten quieter. The trial had taken most of the first year. Elena had testified twice, once in person and once by deposition, and Ryan had sat in the gallery for the first one and held her hand afterward in the hallway while she shook. And he had not gone to the second one because Agent Albin, who had turned into something like a friend, had told him gently that his face on a news clip was not a thing any of them wanted. The sentencing had come down in February. Alexander Valentin Cross would not see the outside of a federal facility again until he was, by Ryan's arithmetic, a very old man. Peter Hollis had settled. The pipeline had been rerouted. The world had moved on, the way it always did, on to the next outrage and then the one after that. Ryan had gotten work. A small outfit in town, 3 guys in a truck, framing additions for people who had moved to Colorado and wanted their kitchens opened up. The pay was honest. His ankle, which had never quite forgiven him for the warehouse roof, ached in the mornings, and he had made peace with that. He liked the work. He liked the drive home. Elena was writing. Not the book everyone had expected her to write. She had turned down 3 of those, but something smaller for a children's press, about a girl who loses everything she owns and has to learn which things she actually misses. The first draft was 40 pages. She kept them in a folder on the kitchen counter. Mia had read every draft, in the mysterious way a 6-year-old reads a book that is technically beyond her, and had rendered several verdicts, most of them favorable. Elena had not, for the record, moved into the rented house right away. She had stayed at Rose's for 7 months after the trial, and Ryan and Mia had stayed at a small apartment 10 minutes from the school Mia had started in August, and there had been a lot of careful driving back and forth, and a lot of Sunday dinners, and a lot of long quiet evenings on Rose's porch, in which Ryan and Elena had said very little and understood a great deal. It had been Mia, eventually, who had forced the question. She had come into the kitchen one morning and said, with the enormous seriousness of her age, "Daddy, I would like Elena to sleep at our house on weekdays too, please." And Ryan had looked at Elena across the kitchen, and Elena had looked at him, and something that had been parked for half a year had, without anyone announcing it, quietly moved. Now, in the backyard, he could hear the 2 of them in the kitchen through the open window, his daughter explaining in enormous detail the rules of a game she had invented on the walk home from school. Elena making the small, attentive sounds of a woman who had learned that a 6-year-old's rules are sacred and require respectful interrogation. Harold was on the back steps watching a squirrel he was never going to catch. Rose was on her way up the hill with a pie, because Rose brought pies the way other people brought bottles of wine, and because Rose, at 77, had decided that she was going to drive herself wherever she wanted until the state said otherwise. Daniel came out the back door with 2 beers. He handed Ryan one. He stood next to him at the grill without saying anything for a minute. That was Ryan had learned Daniel's particular gift, a shape of silence that was not waiting for you to speak. "You okay?" Daniel said eventually. "Yeah." "Yeah?" "Yeah, Danny, I'm okay." "Good." They stood there and drank their beers. Inside, Elena laughed at something. It was a sound Ryan had heard now. He had counted once and then stopped counting. Probably 1,000 times since the first small surprised laugh in a kitchen in a building on Delwood Street. He still noticed it every time. He thought, standing there with a spatula in one hand and a beer in the other, of the thing he had told himself for 3 years after Sarah left, that love was something other people were welcome to, that a man his size and his shape could not afford it, that the best a person could do once he had a child and a job and a pile of bills was to keep his head down and not make it worse. He had believed that honestly for a long time. He was not sure when exactly he had stopped. It was not at the alley. The alley, he thought now, had only been a decision to not walk past. That was a small thing. Anybody could have made that decision. Most people would have. It was not at the roof either. The roof had been a thing that happened to him, a thing his hands and his feet had done before his brain had caught up. It had been, he thought, somewhere in the diner in Harriston. At the moment when his 4-year-old daughter had asked, "Will Elena be there?" and he had heard himself say, "Yes, Bug, Elena will be there," and had understood, before he fully understood it, that he was agreeing to something he was not going to be able to take back. A man, he thought, watching Elena through the kitchen window as she bent down to listen to Mia explain some further refinement of her new game, spends a long time being told that the brave thing is to walk into fire. And sometimes it is. Sometimes the brave thing is the alley and the roof and the camera. But sometimes, he thought, the brave thing is the other direction. Sometimes the brave thing is to let a stranger become not a stranger. To let a kitchen fill up again. To let your daughter call somebody family before you've worked up the nerve to say the word yourself. To stop believing the lie that you are the kind of man nothing good happens to. Rose's station wagon came up the gravel drive. Mia yelled Nana's here in the voice she used for only one person on the planet, and went barreling past him, screen door banging, Harold galloping behind her. Elena came out onto the back porch. She had a dish towel over her shoulder. She stopped next to him at the grill. She leaned her head, briefly, against his arm. "You're burning the chicken," she said. "I am not." "You absolutely are. That's seasoning." "Okay, babe." She went down the steps to meet Rose. Mia was already carrying the pie, very carefully, with the expression of a person carrying plutonium. Daniel went to help his mother out of the car. Harold went in circles. Ryan stood at the grill for another second and watched his people. And that, he understood for the first time, was the word for it. They were his people. Move around each other in a small backyard in a town he had never expected to live in, and he thought of the line he had said to Elena once on a porch in the snow that he had meant as a plan, and which had turned out, in the end, to be a description of his life. "I'm not going to be one more person who let you walk into a room alone." She had walked into a lot of rooms since then. So had he. Neither of them had walked into any of them alone. He pulled the chicken off the grill before it got any worse. He carried it inside. Elena had the table set. Mia was telling Rose about her tooth. Daniel was opening a bottle of wine he had clearly brought on purpose. Harold was under the table already, positioned strategically. Elena looked up when Ryan came in with the platter. She smiled. He did not say anything out loud. He did not need to. He set the platter down. He sat down next to his daughter. He put his hand briefly on the back of Elena's chair, and she reached up without turning around and touched his fingers. And Mia, pouring apple juice into her cup with both hands, said, "Everybody be quiet. I'm making a speech." And everybody was. She did not, in the end, make the speech. She forgot what it was. She giggled. She ate a roll. It was enough. It was, Ryan thought, looking around the table, at a woman who had nearly died in an alley, at an old woman who had opened her door to 3 strangers, at a cousin who had said, "Where are you? I'm coming," at a daughter who had survived a rooftop and a bus and a year of upheaval and come out the other side still believing, with her whole body, that the world was mostly a place where pies showed up at dinner. More than enough. He had thought, in the dark hours of a long time ago, that he had saved a woman's life. He understood now, with the small, shy clarity that a man only ever earns once, that it had gone the other way around too. She had walked into his apartment a stranger in a ruined coat, and she had pulled him, slowly and without meaning to, out of a life he had stopped noticing was narrow, and she had handed him back a version of himself he had stopped believing was available. Outside, the light went orange over the mountains. Inside, the chicken was a little burned and nobody cared. Harold thumped his tail against Ryan's foot. Mia said, "Can I have the pie now?" Rose said, "After you eat a vegetable, my love." Mia said, "1 vegetable." Rose said, 2. Mia negotiated. She was going to be formidable, that one. Ryan caught Elena's eye across the table. She was laughing silently, one hand over her mouth. He lifted his beer just slightly in her direction. She lifted her water glass back. And that, in the end, was the whole of it.